Chapter 668. See her? Yi Xian was puzzled. Who? The plain-dressed woman did not answer. She looked at Yi Xian. Cultivate well. I'll wait for you. As her voice faded, she became more and more illusory. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, Where are you going? The plain-dressed woman said, To kill. As her voice faded, she disappeared completely. Yi Xian was stunned, somewhat disappointed. The surroundings were so quiet that it seemed to have frozen. The plain-dressed woman. No one had expected this plain-dressed woman to be so powerful. She had killed Lian Xiaotian with a single sword strike. And it had been executed from countless star domains away. If her true body was here, how powerful would she be? Everyone looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, they finally understood why Yi Xian was so monstrous. They also understood why Yi Xian had been able to live for so long despite possessing a fifth-dimensional treasure. It turned out that there was such a great god standing behind him. Happy. This was what all the Scandinavian experts were thinking at this moment. Because the person behind Yi Xian was so powerful, this meant that the chaotic universe was completely capable of resisting the black-yellow great world. Yi Xian suddenly looked at the 100-man regiment in the distance. The leader suddenly said, Retreat. Retreat. Lian Xiaotian had died in battle. With just the 100 of them, there was no way they could resist the entire chaotic universe. Retreat? Yi Xian smiled coldly. Are you retarded? You still want to retreat? Kill them all. Kill them all. As his voice faded, the countless Scandinavian experts behind him charged forward. The leader of the 100-man regiment had a ferocious expression. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. As soon as he spoke, the 100 people charged forward. In order to prevent the black-yellow great world side from losing too many people, Yi Xian also charged forward. It had to be said that these 100 people were indeed powerful. However, without the support of a top expert, they were no match for the chaotic universe's side. About 2 hours later, the 100 people were completely wiped out. Looking at the 100 corpses floating in space, Yi Xian remained expressionless. Beside him, Zhou Yafu suddenly asked, What should we do with these corpses? Yi Xian said, Cut off their heads and hang them here. Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and they looked at Yi Xian in unison. Zhou Yafu hesitated for a moment, then said, These people are not afraid of death, they are real men, to treat them like this. Yi Xian looked at Zhou Yafu, they fought to the death without surrendering, nor did they run away. I respect them from the bottom of my heart, but has Senior ever thought about it? Why had they come to the Chaos Verse? The destruction of our Chaos Verse. If we lose, then once they enter our Chaos Verse, will they respect the living beings of our Chaos Verse? No, they will be crueler than anyone else. When he spoke up to this point, he glanced at the surroundings. We respect the strong, but we don't respect invaders. So long as they are invaders, then no matter how strong they are or how unyielding they aren't worthy of our respect. So, we have to be stronger and crueler than them. As he spoke, he gazed towards the darkness in the distance. Shadow guards, cut off their heads. As soon as he finished speaking, over 20 people suddenly appeared, and it didn't take long for 100 bloody heads to appear before everyone. Yi Xian's face remained emotionless. Just hang them here. As he spoke, he gazed towards the depths of the starry sky. Our strength can't compare to Sky-Earth world, but we have to let everyone know that we dare to fight. We dare to fight. These words resounded incessantly in the minds of everyone present. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Clean up the spoils of the battle. Many of them instantly revealed delighted expressions when they heard this. After all, the equipment of this group was of the highest quality, and it was even better than the equipment of the soldiers of the Divine Kingdom. Yi Xian gazed towards the distance and noticed that the rock had been trapped by Mu Nanji and the others as well. Yi Xian walked over to the rock, and the rock instantly roared furiously. Yi Xian asked, Do you want to surrender? The rock glared angrily at Yi Xian with a ferocious gaze. Yi Xian nodded, Kill it. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Right at this moment, an old man hurriedly said, "Divine leader, can you hand it over to the old man?" Yi Xian gazed at the old man while Shengguan Xian said, "He's the sect master of the myriad beast sect, and he's very skilled in taming demon beasts." Yi Xian nodded, "All right." The sect master was delighted when he heard this, and he hurriedly bowed, "Thank you." Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings, and then he said, "Miss Shengguan, distribute the spoils of the battle to everyone. As for how it should be distributed, you decide." Shengguan Xian nodded, "Understood." Yi Xian didn't say anything else, and he turned around and left. Yi Xian arrived at a starry sky, and he just sat there in the starry sky while looking at the endless starry sky around him in silence. At this moment, a woman walked over to his side. It was Zhao Mu. Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu and smiled, "Miss Zhao." Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian spoke softly, "We've won this time. But for some reason, I can't feel happy at all." Zhao Mu walked over to Yi Xian's side and sat down. She didn't say anything. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his palm. Looking at the World Prison Pagoda in his hand, Yi Xian spoke softly, "This pagoda represents the 5 dimensions. Logically speaking, it shouldn't have fallen into my hands, but it just so happened to fall into my hands." As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled, "I have a feeling that I'll definitely have great trouble in the future." The World Prison Pagoda trembled, as if it was saying something. Shaoling, suddenly said, "It will bring you to the 5 dimensions." "To the 5 dimensions?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Why are you going to the 5th dimension?" Shaoling, replied, "It said to go to the 5 dimensions to plant spirit fruits." Yi Xian, World Prison Pagoda. At this time, the World Prison Pagoda suddenly appeared in front of Shaoling. It looked at Shaoling, and trembled, as if protesting. Shaoling waved her right hand, and the sword at the top of the pagoda suddenly flew into her hand. She looked at the World Prison Pagoda. "Do you have a problem?" The World Prison Pagoda was silent for a moment, then hurriedly shook its head, indicating that there was no problem. Shaoling said, "If you have a problem, you can say it, I'm not an unreasonable spirit." World Prison Pagoda, looking at Shaoling, and the World Prison Pagoda in the pagoda, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He then stood up and looked at Zhao Mu. "Miss Zhao, let's go." Zhao Mu nodded. At this time, Shengguan Xian, suddenly walked over. She glanced at Zhao Mu, then looked at Yi Xian. "Do you want to return to the Order City now?" Yi Xian shook his head, "No." Shengguan Xian, looked at Yi Xian. "Why?" Yi Xian said softly, "Because the people from the black-yellow great world will definitely come again." As he spoke, he looked at the surrounding starry sky. "From now on, this is the last barrier of our chaotic universe." The last barrier. Shengguan Xian was silent. Here, almost all the top powerhouses of the chaotic universe were gathered. If they were defeated here, it would mean that the chaotic universe would fall. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Tell the Celestial Arcanum sect leader to come see me." Shengguan Xian nodded slightly and left quietly. Soon, the Celestial Arcanum sect leader came in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, "Is there any news of Shaoqi?" The Celestial Arcanum sect leader shook his head, "Not yet. Our people have already started to work on the Gate of Heaven. I hope there is good news." Yi Xian nodded and said, "Which universe is the closest to our chaotic universe?" "The one that hasn't perished." The Celestial Arcanum sect leader said in a deep voice, "In the vast universe, they are far away from us. The reason why they haven't fallen into the hands of the black-yellow great world is because we are closer to the black-yellow great world than them. If we perish, the next target of the black-yellow great world will definitely be them." Yi Xian nodded slightly, "I will go to the vast universe." The Celestial Arcanum sect leader looked at Yi Xian. "Lord God wants to join forces with them?" Yi Xian nodded. "Although we have to rely on ourselves, it is good to rope in some helpers." The Celestial Arcanum sect leader hesitated and said, this vast universe is a bit complicated. Yi Xian asked, how complicated? The Celestial Arcanum sect leader said in a deep voice, the vast universe is not unified. The forces are complicated. In the vast universe, there was a sect called the Prairie Blazing Sect. This sect was the most powerful and had the most members. However, the members of the sect were like rabid dogs. They killed and plundered everywhere they went, creating a foul atmosphere in the area. So, as he said this, he shook his head. It is very difficult to join forces with them. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, we have to try. The Celestial Arcanum sect leader nodded. If we can get them to fight against the black-yellow great world with us, it is naturally a good thing. However, Lord God should be careful this time. There are also experts there, especially this Prairie Fire sect. They are not easy to deal with. Yi Xian nodded. I am going to find them to cooperate, not to cause trouble. At this time, Shengguan Xian suddenly said, do you want me to go with you? Yi Xian shook his head. There are still many things in God Nation that you need to be responsible for. As he said this, he looked at Zhao Mu. Miss Zhao, do you have time? If you do, come with me. Zhao Mu was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly smiled. I know you have time. Let's go. Zhao Mu, after finding the Celestial Arcanum sect leader to find the route to the vast universe, Yi Xian set off with Zhao Mu. But this time, Yi Xian did not take the Imperial Starship. Instead, he took the Golden Dragon. The Golden Dragon's speed was not as fast as the Imperial Starship, but it was cool. On the back of the Golden Dragon, Yi Xian stood quietly, and not far from him was Zhao Mu. The vast universe. Yi Xian looked up at the distant starry sky and said softly, I hope those guys from the black-yellow great world don't come so soon. What he needed the most now was time. About 2 hours later, Yi Xian and Zhao Mu entered the vast universe. Yi Xian sensed the surroundings and found that the spiritual qi in this universe was less abundant than the chaotic universe. At this moment, a strong aura suddenly appeared in the distance. Soon, a man in black appeared not far from Yi Xian and Zhao Mu. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this time, the man in black suddenly looked at Zhao Mu. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. What a beautiful woman. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The man in front of him had a strong aura. Although he had not reached the Emperor realm, he was at the peak of the Tendo realm. An expert of this level should not have such a temperament. Yi Xian was about to speak, but the man in black suddenly looked at him. I want this woman. A sword suddenly pierced the man in black's eyebrows. The man in black's eyes widened. I am Prairie Fire. How dare you? Yi Xian raised his hand and slashed. Chi. The man in black's head flew off. Yi Xian looked at the head and said softly, I am the divine lord of the God Nation. Am I proud? P.S. No tickets? Then let's do it. Is there anyone who wants to do it? Chapter 669. As he watched the youth's head fall, Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that this trip might not be so smooth. At this moment, a blur shot over from the distance. Yi Xian frowned, and a powerful sword aura swept out of his body. Rumble. This sword aura instantly forced the blur to a halt. The blur faded, and a man appeared in front of Yi Xian. The man wore a long black robe, with 2 small black characters engraved on his left chest, Prairie Fire. Prairie Fire. The man looked at Yi Xian. God of Swords. Yi Xian was expressionless. Yi Xian, a divine lord of the divine nation of the Chaos Verse, wishes to meet the head of your Prairie Fire sect. The man narrowed his eyes. A divine lord of the Chaos Verse. As he spoke, he sized up Yi Xian and sneered. You're a divine lord of the Chaos Verse? Yi Xian was expressionless. Do you want to die? The man's expression turned savage. He was about to speak, but at this moment, a flying sword suddenly pressed against his brow. The sword penetrated half an inch, and blood gushed out. The man froze. He looked at Yi Xian. Sir, have you come to provoke my prairie fire sect? You. At this moment, a streak of sword light slashed down from the man's shoulder. Rip. The man's entire right arm fell off. Yi Xian walked up to the man and looked at him. Where is your prairie fire sect? The man stared at Yi Xian. This isn't your chaos verse. You. Another streak of sword light slashed down. Rip. The man's left arm was sent flying. Yi Xian looked at the man. Why don't you try spouting some more nonsense? The man stared at Yi Xian. I'll take you there. Yi Xian nodded. Lead the way. Just like that, under the man's guidance, Yi Xian arrived at the prairie fire sect of the vast universe. As soon as he arrived at the prairie fire sect, a group of people surrounded Yi Xian, led by a middle-aged man in a black robe. The middle-aged man glanced at the youth next to Yi Xian, then at Yi Xian. Did you chop off his arm? Yi Xian nodded. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. I don't think my vast universe has any grudges with your chaotic universe. Yi Xian smiled. There isn't. However, as soon as we arrived, your prairie fire sect members tried to steal my woman. At this moment, two pairs of eyes shot towards him like sharp swords. Yi Xian hurried to correct himself. He's my friend. The prairie fire sect tried to steal my friend, so I taught you a little lesson. Yi Xian. Yi Xian, fire. The man stared. Xian, Yi. Yi Xian. Looking at the middle-aged man, Yi Xian said, he should respect me and my friend. What do you think? The middle-aged man shook his head and smiled. In the vast universe, it has always been others who respect our prairie fire sect. Yi Xian opened his palm. A sword appeared in it. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. It seems we need to fight first. In this world, the strong were revered. He knew that he needed to gain the respect of these people. There was no other way but to use strength. Only when he was strong enough would these people take him seriously. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and clenched his right fist. As you wish. He was about to attack when a voice suddenly rang out from the horizon. So it's God Nation City Lord Yi. Apologies for not coming out to greet you. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at the sky. A middle-aged man in a white robe was standing in the sky. The white-robed man said calmly, City Lord Yi, why don't you go fight the Xuanhuan Great World? Why do you have the time to come to our vast universe? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. You know me? The white-robed man smiled. Who doesn't know you, City Lord Yi? Yi Xian smiled. You must be the sect leader of the Prairie Fire sect, right? The white-robed man shook his head. Vice sect leader. Yi Xian nodded. Vice sect leader, you should know why I'm here. The white-robed man smiled. I know. City Lord Yi wants to drag us into fighting the Xuanhuan Great World together, right? Yi Xian nodded. The white-robed man laughed. City Lord Yi, your wishful thinking is not ordinary. You want us to fight the Xuanhuan Great World, but I'd like to ask, what benefits do we get? Yi Xian said calmly, benefits? If the Chaos Verse is destroyed, who do you think they'll go after next? The white-robed man shook his head. City Lord Yi, the problem is that the people of the Xuanhuan Great World are going after your Chaos Verse, not our vast universe. Yi Xian fell silent. The white-robed man smiled. City Lord Yi, forgive me for being blunt, but this is a matter between your Chaos Verse and the people of the Xuanhuan Great World. It has nothing to do with us. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian looked at the white-robed man. You can represent the vast universe? The white-robed man smiled. Of course I can. My Prairie Fire sect is the master of the vast universe. Yi Xian nodded, then looked at Zhao Mu. Let's go. He finally understood. The Prairie Fire sect wanted to sit on top of the mountain and reap the spoils later. Or rather, it was none of their business. Given their attitude, if he continued to speak, he would undoubtedly be asking to be humiliated. Just as the two of them were about to leave, the white-robed man suddenly said, "City Lord Yi." Yi Xian turned to look at the white-robed man. The white-robed man smiled. "City Lord Yi, we know a bit about the Xuanhuan Great World. I heard that the king of the northern region wanted to adopt you as his son, but you refused. I have to say, your decision was very foolish." Yi Xian smiled. "Then why don't you become his son, sir?" The white-robed man's eyes narrowed. Yi Xian smiled again. "I understand. It should be that you don't even have the right to be his son, right?" The white-robed man's eyes grew cold. "City Lord Yi, you must understand one thing. This is the vast universe, not your chaos verse." As soon as he finished speaking, several black-robed experts suddenly appeared not far behind Yi Xian and Zhao Mu. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Vice-Secmaster, are you going to fight me?" The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian, but said nothing. Yi Xian smiled. "Come, I'll give you 3 moves. Do you dare to attack?" The expressions of all the Prairie Blaze experts instantly turned gloomy when they heard this. In the vast universe, no one had ever dared to act arrogantly before the Prairie Blaze experts. All the Prairie Blaze experts were looking at the white-robed man, but he hadn't attacked yet. Yi Xian smiled. "What? You don't dare?" The white-robed man looked coldly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, the young and arrogant usually don't live for long. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and a sword appeared in his hand. Executing Heaven's Sword. Yi Xian walked towards the white-robed man with his sword in hand. In an instant, monstrous sword energy swept out from within him. The white-robed man's expression changed when he sensed the sword energy. At this moment, besides coldness, there was deep fear in his eyes as well. He'd naturally heard of Yi Xian. Moreover, he knew that Yi Xian had just repelled the attack from Sky-Earth World not too long ago. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped moving, and he gazed at the white-robed man with his sword in hand. "Are you going to attack?" The white-robed man gazed at Yi Xian and didn't dare speak. Yi Xian shook his head and chuckled. "What a piece of trash." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Right at this moment, one of the nearby Prairie Blaze experts suddenly shouted furiously, "Who gave you the gall to actually dare to attack my Prairie Blaze?" Suddenly, a sword howl resounded in the surroundings. In the next moment, the head of that expert flew into the air. Hiss! Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Everyone here was stunned. He was instantly killed. He was instantly killed with a single strike. Yi Xian glanced coldly at the surroundings. "Any more?" Right at this moment, a man walked forward and stared fixedly at Yi Xian. He was just about to speak when a flying sword suddenly flashed through the surroundings. Hiss! The man didn't even have the chance to react before his head flew into the air. The surroundings suddenly fell silent as if it had been frozen. Yi Xian glanced coldly at the surroundings. Who else? Chapter 670. Who else? Yi Xian's voice was very calm, but it carried a ghastly killing intent that sent shivers down one's spine. The white-robed man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. He'd realized that he'd underestimated this city governor Yi. Not only had he underestimated Yi Xian's strength, he'd even underestimated Yi Xian's temper. In the distance, Yi Xian glanced at Prairie Blaze and the other experts, and a wisp of disdain suffused the corners of his mouth before he turned and left. Right at this moment, the white-robed man suddenly said, "City Governor Yi, will remember how you humiliated my Prairie Blaze sect today." Yi Xian stopped, but he didn't turn around. Those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. All of you don't respect me, so why should I respect all of you? As soon as he finished speaking, he led Zhao Mu and vanished into the distance. He'd always believed that respect was mutual. If others respected you, then you had to respect them. If they didn't respect you, then why should you respect them? As the saying goes, if a mad dog insults you, then do you have to be like a mad dog and insult them as well? The meaning of this saying was that one shouldn't fuss about it with ordinary people. However, Yi Xian didn't think so. Some people were worse than mad dogs. If they insulted you or bullied you, then if you exercised forbearance and took a step back, they would take a yard when given an inch. Most people in the world were like that, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. So, one had to be a good person or a ruthless one. After Yi Xian left, the white-robed man's face was gloomy to the extreme. Yi Xian and Zhao Mu returned to the boundless starry sky. Just as they were about to leave the vast universe, a woman suddenly appeared before Yi Xian and Zhao Mu. From the looks of the woman, she was around 30 years old. She had a voluptuous figure, and the places that should be protruding were protruding, and the places that should be protruding were protruding. Her figure was very sexy, and her face was also very exquisite. It was simply a devil's figure, and the face of an angel. She was absolutely the woman of all men's dreams. Zhao Mu suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. I'm a decent person. Looking at Yi Xian, Zhao Mu did not speak. In the distance, the woman walked up to Yi Xian. She sized up Yi Xian. You are the divine nation's divine lord? Yi Xian nodded. You are? The woman glanced at the surroundings and said, City Governor Yi, can we go somewhere else? Yi Xian was silent. The woman continued, I know why City Lord Yi has come. The Prairie Blazing sect isn't willing to talk to you, but I am. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Who do you represent? The woman said, the Yin Yang sect. Yi Xian frowned, Yin Yang sect? The woman nodded. Change locations? Yi Xian looked around and nodded. Lead the way. The woman turned around and left. The woman brought Yi Xian and Zhao Mu to the Yin Yang sect. As soon as they entered the Yin Yang sect, Zhao Mu frowned. There were many women in the Yin Yang sect. No, it should be said that they were all women. Not only were they very beautiful, but they were also dressed in revealing clothes. They were very alluring. Along the way, many women stared at Yi Xian, and there was even greed in their eyes. This caused Zhao Mu's expression to become even more unfriendly. In a short while, the woman brought Yi Xian and Zhao Mu to a large hall. After entering the hall, Yi Xian's expression became slightly strange. On the walls around the hall, there were many paintings that were not suitable for children. Zhao Mu was expressionless, and his expression became even colder. The woman stopped and made an inviting gesture. City Lord Yi, I am Shui Jingfei, the sect leader of the Yin Yang sect. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then asked, Sect leader Shui, does your sect focus on dual cultivation? Shui Jingfei shook her head. Not really. Yi Xian nodded and did not ask anything else. Shui Jingfei looked at Yi Xian. My Yin Yang sect was once the #1 sect in the vast universe. Unfortunately, it declined, and in the end, Prairie Fire rose. At this point, her expression became quite complicated. After Prairie Fire rose, they completely obeyed me to prosper, and opposed me to perish. In order to protect the people in the sect, my master had to use a great formation to hide everyone in the sect. However, the people of Prairie Fire never gave up on us. Yi Xian asked. Why? Concubine Shui Jingfei said softly, because most of our Yin Yang sect disciples are born with charm bodies or some special physiques. In addition, we cultivate dual cultivation techniques. If we dual cultivate with our sect's disciples, the man will have great benefits. Yi Xian said solemnly, their target is you? Shui Jingfei nodded. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then said, Sect leader Shui, you said that you cultivate dual cultivation, but why don't I see any men in your sect? Shui Jingfei said calmly, City Lord Yi, you might have misunderstood us. Our Yin Yang sect women can only have one man in their lifetime. The cultivation method they are cultivating now is just preparation for the future. If they meet someone they like, they can pass the Yin and Yang energy in their body to him. Both sides, One yin and one yang, become one. At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. Our yin-yang sect women aren't as lascivious as the outside world says. We just look at the sex aspect. In that aspect, everyone does it. Since they dare to do it, why don't they dare to say it? Some people look like gentlemen on the surface, but who knows how dirty they are. City Lord Yi, what do you think? Yi Xian smiled. Sect leader Shui, don't think too much. I don't have any bad thoughts about your sect. What I asked just now was just curiosity. Shui Jingfei looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian said again, Sect leader Shui, you brought me here today for something, right? Shui Jingfei nodded. I want to bring the entire yin-yang sect to the chaotic universe. To the primordial chaos monster race. Yi Xian was startled. Then he smiled. That's a good thing. It was indeed a good thing. Because he found that the yin-yang sect women weren't weak. When he came in, he saw 12 emperors. Not only that, he also felt some powerful presences in the yin-yang sect. This yin-yang sect wasn't so simple. If they went to the chaotic universe, it was naturally a good thing for the chaotic universe. At this time, Yi Xian said, going to the chaotic universe is fine. But I have to make one thing clear. The chaotic universe is facing an unprecedented crisis. You must understand this. Shui Jingfei nodded. I know. The yin-yang sect is willing to live and die with the chaotic universe. But... At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. We need City Lord Ye's help. Yi Xian said, what kind of help? Shui Jingfei said, if we want to leave this vast universe, we will definitely alarm Prairie Blaze. They won't let us leave, so, at this point, she looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was silent. Shui Jingfei got up and bowed. City Lord Yi, I'm not using you. I'm asking for your help. If you help us get through this, we will repay you. Yi Xian shook his head. There's no need for repayment. Your trip to the chaotic universe is beneficial to the chaotic universe. As he said this, he looked at Shui Jingfei. Sect leader Shui, get ready. We are leaving for the chaotic universe. Shui Jingfei wanted to say something but stopped. Yi Xian smiled. Why? Shui Jingfei said softly, I know that City Lord Ye's strength is unparalleled. However, the yin-yang sect has many people. Prairie Blaze can't do anything to you, but many of us can't resist them. Yi Xian was silent. As Shui Jingfei said, the people of Liao Yuan sect definitely couldn't do anything to him. However, as the strongest sect in this vast universe, the Liao Yuan sect definitely wasn't simple. Once he was held up by the people of Liao Yuan sect, the people of yin-yang sect would be in danger. Shui Jingfei was worried about this. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. A voice transmission talisman suddenly disappeared. A moment later, a voice sounded in front of Yi Xian, what are your orders? It was Shangguan Xian's voice. Yi Xian said, let the Dark Guards and Shenwu army come to the vast universe as fast as possible. A moment later, Shangguan Xian's voice sounded, understood. Yi Xian looked at Shui Jingfei. Let's wait. Once my people arrive, we will leave. Shui Jingfei bowed slightly, thank you. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian and Zhao Mu, the two of you, follow me. After that, she got up and left. Soon, under Shui Jingfei's lead, the two of them came to a secret room. Inside the secret room, there was a bed. Around the secret room, there was a strange fragrance. Yi Xian was a bit puzzled. Sect leader Shui, this is? Shui Jingfei said, this bed is my yin-yang sect's treasure, the yin-yang bed. Dual cultivation on the bed will have great benefits. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian and Zhao Mu, the two of you can, wait. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Shui. Is there a misunderstanding? Shui Jingfei looked at Zhao Mu. Zhao Mu was expressionless, but his hands were clenched. Seeing this scene, Shui Jingfei smiled apologetically. Sorry, I thought too much. Zhao Mu suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian quickly said, Miss Shui, you should be more careful in the future. He knew Zhao Mu's temper. This woman was a violent maniac and would attack at the slightest provocation. However, what he didn't expect was that Zhao Mu didn't attack. Shui Jingfei bowed slightly to Zhao Mu. Please forgive me, Mississippi. Zhao Mu was expressionless and didn't say anything. Yi Xian quickly said, let's go, let's go. As he said this, he took Zhao Mu and left the small house. Outside the small house, Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu. Zhao Mu's expression was calm, no emotions could be seen. At this moment, Shui Jingfei suddenly said, City Lord Yi, if you need, we can arrange some special services for you. Yi Xian suddenly turned and looked at Shui Jingfei. Miss Shui, do you have a misunderstanding about me? Shui Jingfei looked at Yi Xian. What does City Lord Yi mean? Yi Xian said solemnly, do I look like a pervert? Shui Jingfei. Yi Xian was about to speak when a woman suddenly came in front of Shui Jingfei and said solemnly, Prairie Fire's people found our area. Prairie Fire. Hearing this, Shui Jingfei's expression sank. P.S. Do you still have any tickets? Chapter 671. Yi Xian looked at Shui Jingfei. You seem to know that they are looking for your Yenyang sect. At this moment, he felt that something was wrong. The Yenyang sect would not rely on Scandinavia for no reason. After all, once they went to Scandinavia, they would be under Scandinavia's control. Who would be willing to live under someone else's roof? Only now did he understand that the Yenyang sect might have reached its most critical moment. Going to the chaotic universe might be their only choice. Shui Jingfei was silent for a moment, then said, Young Master Yi, to tell you the truth, not long ago, the Prairie Fire sect used some unknown method to find our approximate location. Speaking up to here, she looked at Yi Xian. We really have nowhere to go. Yi Xian smiled. I'm surprised that Sect Master Shui could be so honest. I'll say it again. Once we reach the chaotic universe, your sect will be a member of our chaotic universe. When we face the black-yellow great world, we might die in battle, but I can guarantee you that your sect will not die from internal strife. It had to be said that the women of the Yenyang sect were definitely desired by countless forces. These women had cultivated their entire lives. If they could obtain them, their cultivation would definitely skyrocket. Shui Jingfei looked at Yi Xian. If we go to the chaotic universe, my Yenyang sect is willing to live and die with the chaotic universe. Between death and humiliation, they would naturally choose death. Because they knew very well that once they fell into the hands of the Prairie Fire sect, it would be a fate worse than death. Yi Xian nodded. Get people to prepare. Once my people arrive, we'll set off. Shui Jingfei hesitated, then said, I'm afraid the people from the Prairie Fire sect will find us soon. Yi Xian looked at Shui Jingfei. He did not speak. Shui Jingfei hesitated, then said, Does City Lord Yi have any other requests? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Miss Shui, let's talk about it after you understand. Concubine Shui Jingfei glanced at Yi Xian and was about to speak. At this moment, a woman suddenly rushed in. Sect Master, someone is forcefully breaking the formation outside. Consort Shui Jing was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, I will go. Gather the Yenyang sect's men. Once my men arrive, we'll leave. As he spoke, he looked at the woman in front of him. Take me there. The woman glanced at Yi Xian and then at Shui Jingfei, who nodded slightly. The woman said, City Lord Yi, please. Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu. You stay here. With that, he turned around and left with the woman. Zhao Mu did not stay and followed them. Yi Xian had no choice but to let her follow. Not long after, Yi Xian arrived at the entrance of the Yenyang sect. Not far in front of him, there was a thin light screen. Outside the light screen was a grassland. Right at this moment, a white-robed man suddenly appeared in front of the light screen. Seeing this person, Yi Xian was stunned. This person was the deputy sect master of the Prairie sect that he had met not long ago. The white-robed man suddenly turned sideways and an old man appeared beside him. The old man held a black compass in his hand. The old man silently chanted a few words and the compass in his hand began to spin violently. Soon, the light screen in front of Yi Xian suddenly became illusory. Seeing this, the white-robed man's mouth slightly curled. Yinyang sect. After a few breaths. Boom! The screen of light suddenly exploded. Soon, the entire Yinyang sect appeared in front of the white-robed man. The white-robed man suddenly laughed. But soon, his smile froze because he saw Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian, the white-robed man's smile gradually turned cold. Yi Xian. Why are you here? Yi Xian smiled. So it's the deputy sect master of the prairie sect. What a coincidence. The white-robed man stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, my prairie sect will definitely eat up the Yinyang sect. Yi Xian smiled. Are you provoking me? The white-robed man clenched his fists. A group of people had appeared behind him at some point. There were more than 100 of them, and they were all experts of the prairie sect. Yi Xian grinned. Does having more people make you stronger? The white-robed man said in a low voice, City Lord Yi, we have no intention of becoming enemies with you. Our target is just the Yinyang sect. Yi Xian smiled. Then I might be a little embarrassed. The Yinyang sect has already submitted to my divine kingdom. They are now people of my divine kingdom. The white-robed man narrowed his eyes. It seems that City Lord Yi has no choice but to intervene. Yi Xian was about to speak when concubine Shui Jingfei suddenly walked out. She looked at the white-robed man. My Yinyang sect has already submitted to the divine kingdom. From now on, we will move to the chaotic universe. The white-robed man grinned. Concubine Shui Jingfei, do you think that's possible? He suddenly pointed at Yi Xian angrily. Do you think he can protect you? In your dreams, you. Wang. A sword hum rang out. Chi. Before the white-robed man could react, his entire right arm flew off. Everyone was shocked. The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian in shock. You, Yi Xian looked at the white-robed man. You should respect me. The white-robed man said, Yi Xian, you, right at this moment, a strand of light flashed through the battlefield. Chi. The white-robed man's head flew off. Blood spurted out. Seeing this, the experts of the prairie sect were shocked. Yi Xian's strength far exceeded their expectations. In the distance, Yi Xian looked up at the sky. The main character still hasn't shown up. After a moment of silence, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Concubine Shui Jingfei, who was next to Yi Xian, said in a deep voice, Sect leader of the prairie sect, Mo Shanqing. Mo Shanqing glanced at Yi Xian. He was expressionless. City Lord Yi, you've stretched your hand too far. Yi Xian smiled. I thought you wouldn't show up. Mo Shanqing said indifferently, City Lord Yi, my prairie sect has no enmity with you. We don't want to become enemies with you. Yi Xian smiled. I don't want to be entangled with you either. However, the Yinyang sect must come with me. Mo Shanqing looked at Yi Xian. My prairie sect will eat the Yinyang sect. No one can protect it. This is the attitude of the prairie fire sect. Yi Xian smiled. Looks like we're going to spar. Mo Shanqing nodded. The old man also wants to see how monstrous City Lord Yi is. As soon as he finished speaking, another 20 people appeared behind him. A total of 120 people. The auras of these 120 people were extremely powerful. Among them, 16 were Emperor Realm powerhouses, and 6 were God Realm powerhouses. As for Mo Shanqing, he was unfathomable. Mo Shanqing looked at Yi Xian. Unless City Lord Yi can kill me in a second, my people will take all the women of the Yinyang sect away. Yi Xian smiled. Try me? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed forward. Mo Shanqing narrowed his eyes. He flicked his sleeves. A powerful force surged out like a tide. In an instant, the surrounding space began to boil. Yi Xian's sword arrived. Boom! In an instant, Mo Shanqing was sent back hundreds of zhang. Seeing this, the faces of the prairie sect powerhouses turned ugly. From the looks of it. In the distance, Mo Shanqing's face was also extremely gloomy. Yi Xian's strength was stronger than he had imagined. Yi Xian looked at Mo Shanqing. The Yinyang sect is under my protection. As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed his sword diagonally to the ground. Hum. The executing heaven's sword trembled violently. A sword hum shook the sky. Mo Shanqing looked at Yi Xian. His expression gradually became ferocious. Yi Xian, the old man tells you, this is the vast universe. Even if you're a dragon, the old man has to kneel before you. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand. Two shadows shot toward Yi Xian. 2 God Realm powerhouses, plus Mo Shanqing, a total of 3 God Realm powerhouses. No, Mo Shanqing was a peak God Realm powerhouse. The moment the 3 of them made their move, the rest of the prairie sect powerhouses followed suit. Obviously, the purpose of Mo Shanqing and the other 2 was to stall Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian was expressionless. Bullying me because I have fewer people? As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand. 6 fiend corpses suddenly appeared in front of him. 6 God Realm fiend corpses. The moment the 6 fiend corpses appeared, Mo Shanqing's face changed. At this time, 9 swords suddenly appeared above the heads of the prairie sect powerhouses. Sword formation. The moment the 9 swords appeared, a wave of sword light engulfed the prairie sect powerhouses. In an instant, miserable screams rang out. Seeing this, Mo Shanqing's face turned savage. Yi Xian. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out a token arrow and threw it out. Boom! The token arrow shot up into the sky, shaking the horizon. After a few breaths, a dozen powerful auras suddenly attacked from the horizon. Behind Yi Xian, Shui Jingfei said solemnly, "It's the enforcer of the prairie sect." Enforcer. Yi Xian looked at them. Needless to say, their auras were really strong. Moreover, they were all Emperor Realm powerhouses. Yi Xian was just about to attack when the horizon in the distance suddenly shook. In the next moment, some strange black-clothed figures suddenly appeared around the experts of the prairie sect. As soon as these black-clothed figures appeared, the heads of the experts of the prairie sect flew off one by one. Hidden guards. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the sky. 1,000 people were diving down from the sky. The imposing aura of these 1,000 people wasn't just a little bit stronger than the prairie sect's powerhouses. The divine martial army. And the person in the lead was Shangguanxian. Yi Xian was slightly surprised when he saw Shangguanxian. He hadn't expected that she would personally lead the army here. The prairie sect's sect master, Mo Shanqing's face changed when he saw the experts of the divine kingdom. Retreat. It didn't take long for the prairie sect's powerhouses to retreat a few hundred meters away. After the divine martial army landed, they knelt down on one knee towards Yi Xian and said in unison, "Greetings, Divine Lord." Divine Lord. In the hearts of everyone from the divine kingdom, Shaoqi was the true divine lord. Moreover, they didn't reject Yi Xian because Yi Xian's strength was sufficiently formidable. Moreover, Yi Xian had been personally chosen by Shaoqi. It was perfectly justifiable. Yi Xian looked at the crowd in front of him. Rise. All of them stood up in unison, and then they turned around to look at the experts from the prairie sect. Mo Shanqing fell silent for a moment before he said, "City Governor Yi, this is a misunderstanding. My prairie sect." Yi Xian was about to speak when Shangguanxian spoke solemnly, "It's inadvisable to fight here. Our true enemy is the Sky-Earth world, and it'll be very disadvantageous to us if we fall into this place." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he gazed at Mo Shanqing. "Kill them." Chapter 672. Kill them. When she heard Yi Xian's words, Shangguan Xian, was stunned. Yi Xian was expressionless. What's the point of keeping them if not killing them? To keep them to give us trouble in the future? Enemies. Toward enemies, Yi Xian's approach had always been to not be merciful. Not only could he not be merciful, but if he could, he must kill them all. Would the Prairie Fire sect be grateful if he let them go today? No. It would only give them a chance to breathe, and they would definitely take revenge in the future. He, Yi Xian, did not like to kill the enemy without killing them all. If he did not kill them all, it would only bring sorrow in the future. When they heard Yi Xian's words, the Dark Guards had already moved out. The Dark Guards were extremely fast, appearing in front of the Prairie Fire sect powerhouses in an instant. Very soon, the Prairie Fire sect powerhouses fell one by one. And the Divine Martial Army also moved out when the Dark Guards moved out. Overwhelming. The Prairie Fire sect was very strong in the vast universe, but there was still no way to compare with the powerhouses of the Divine Nation. The Divine Nation's strength was weaker than the Black-Yellow Great World, but its system was definitely not weaker than any other place. Moreover, the Divine Nation had gotten rid of the Tendo many years ago, and then controlled the Tendo source of this world. Therefore, in terms of individual strength, the Divine Nation was definitely much stronger than the average universe. For now, the Divine Nation might only be weaker than the Black-Yellow Great World. Of course, there were countless universes in the vast universe, and no one knew if there were other powerful universes or universes with special civilizations. The moment the Divine Martial Army moved out, Mo Shanqing's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. Retreat, retreat quickly. With that, he led the Prairie Fire sect powerhouses and turned to run. They could not fight at all. If the Prairie Fire sect wanted to win, they had to kill Yi Xian first. And Yi Xian was the strongest among this group. There was no way to fight at all. At this moment, they only realized that the Divine Nation was actually so powerful. They could not afford to provoke it. Run. The Prairie Fire sect fled, but the Dark Guards, the Divine Martial Army, and Yi Xian's demonic corpses did not stop. If Yi Xian said he would kill them all, then he would kill them all. Yi Xian suddenly looked at Xue Jingfei of the Yin Yang sect. The latter pondered for a moment and said, "Mobilize all the Emperor Realm experts of the Yin Yang sect." Very soon, streams of powerful auras flew out from the Yin Yang sect. Yi Xian said softly, "Let's go to the Prairie Fire sect and take a look." With that, a golden dragon swooped down and landed steadily in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian jumped onto the golden dragon, followed by Xue Jingfei, Zhao Mu, and Shangguan Xian. Soon, the golden dragon soared away. On the back of the giant dragon, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Leader Xue, if the Burning Prairie sect is removed, can the vast universe be unified?" Consort Xue Jingfei looked deeply at Yi Xian, then said, "Yes. Not only that, the people of this vast universe will thank you." Yi Xian nodded, then said, "Miss Shangguan, let our people take over the vast universe." Shangguan Xian glanced at Yi Xian, then nodded. "All right." With that, she began to contact the chaotic universe. Before long, they arrived at the Prairie Fire sect. At this moment, the Prairie Fire sect had already activated the defensive grand formation. Everyone in the Prairie Fire sect was looking at Yi Xian and the others in the sky. Mo Shanqing stared at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, do you really want to fight to the death with us?" Yi Xian looked at Mo Shanqing. "Fight to the death? Are you qualified?" With that, he waved his right hand, and a sword suddenly tore through the air. Executing Heaven Sword. The moment this sword fell, the defensive grand formation of the Prairie Fire sect instantly shattered. This chapter is not finished, please continue. Yi Xian waved his right hand. Kill. The Divine Martial Army directly swooped down. The enormous dragon beneath Yi Xian's feet charged down as well. At the instant the enormous dragon charged down, the expressions of the countless Prairie Fire sect experts below changed drastically. Dragon aura. This dragon aura was simply too terrifying, and it made it difficult for them to breathe. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly charged down as well. With the current Yi Xian and the executing heaven sword, it could be said that only an End Realm expert above the God Realm could go against him. As for End Realm experts, only the Xuanhuan Great World had them now. When he saw Yi Xian charge over, Mo Shanqing's expression instantly changed. He had seen how terrifying Yi Xian was. In terms of a one-on-one battle, no one in the entire Prairie Fire sect could go against Yi Xian. After hesitating for a moment, Mo Shanqing suddenly roared furiously, "Summon the ancestor." As soon as he spoke, a beam of white light suddenly shot into the sky within the entire Prairie Fire sect. The white light shot into the clouds, and it didn't take long for a middle-aged man to gradually condense within the white light. Everyone present was looking at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's gaze landed on Yi Xian, and very quickly, he frowned, "Sword God." As he spoke, he suddenly looked at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. When he saw the sword, the middle-aged man's expression instantly changed. "It's this sword." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "You recognize it?" The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian. "Why is it in your hands?" Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. "Do you recognize him?" The executing heaven sword trembled. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the middle-aged man. "It doesn't recognize you." The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and asked, "Why is it in your hands?" Yi Xian smiled. "It's a long story, so I won't say much." "Let's fight?" The middle-aged man was silent for a moment, and then he nodded. Yi Xian stomped his right foot. Hong! A sword radiance soared into the sky. In the air, the middle-aged man clenched his right hand and punched down. Kaboom! The surrounding space immediately became illusory. Soon, the two afterimages in the air exchanged blows fiercely. Before long, Yi Xian suddenly returned to his original position, and in the air, the middle-aged man's body had become completely illusory. Seeing this scene, Mo Tianqing's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. In the air, the middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. "You're her descendant. But as far as I know, she seems to use her fists." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Who is she?" The middle-aged man also frowned. "You don't know her?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Are you talking about the original owner of the executing heaven sword?" The middle-aged man was about to say something, but suddenly, his body completely disappeared. Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. "Your previous owner was a woman?" The executing heaven sword trembled and replied. Yi Xian said softly, "Is she very powerful?" The executing heaven sword suddenly trembled violently, as if it was a little excited. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Very powerful. Then can you contact her? Let her come to the chaotic universe to play." Shangguan Xian glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. The executing heaven sword suddenly calmed down, a little gloomy. Yi Xian was about to speak when Mo Shanqing suddenly roared, "Everyone, retreat." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a black light and disappeared at the end of the sky at an extremely fast speed. Escape? Seeing Mo Shanqing escape, Yi Xian and the others were stunned. Not only Yi Xian and the others, but even the experts of the Prairie Fire sect were stunned. He just ran away like that? Soon, the Prairie Fire sect. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. The experts of the Prairie Fire sect also fled. Since the sect master had fled, they naturally would not continue to stay here to die. It could be said that Mo Shanqing's escape directly made all the experts of the Prairie Fire sect lose the will to resist. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Shanqing in the sky. He did not chase because if this kind of expert wanted to escape, he would not be able to catch up. However, he did not intend to let him go just like that. Yi Xian said, "Secret guards." As soon as he finished speaking, more than 20 people in the dark quietly disappeared. Yi Xian said again, "Take care of all the people of the Prairie Fire sect who fled." As Yi Xian's voice fell, the group of divine martial army not far behind him directly rushed out. And Yi Xian brought Shangguan Xian, and the other 2 women to the Prairie Fire sect. Yi Xian glanced around and then said, "There should be a lot of treasures." After saying that, he disappeared not far away. The 3 women, about half an hour later, Yi Xian returned in front of the 3 women, and on his face, there was a trace of a smile than before. Yi Xian laughed, he bent his finger, and a storage ring fell in front of Shangguan Xian. "Some treasures, distribute them to the brothers." Shangguan Xian shook her head, "No." Yi Xian was a little puzzled, "Why?" Shangguan Xian said solemnly, "The divine nation has a reward and punishment system. We can't give the spoils of war to them every time. In the long run, many people will feel that it is reasonable, and then people's hearts will change. Of course, we will also reward ourselves according to merit, and we will not mistreat anyone who serves the country." Yi Xian thought about it, then nodded, "Okay." As he said that, he looked at Xue Jingfei, "Miss Xue, are you still going to the chaotic universe?" Xue Jingfei nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian was a little puzzled, "Why?" "You have to understand, now that the Prairie Fire sect has been eliminated, here." At this point, he stopped abruptly and didn't continue. Because he found that the spirit energy in this vast universe was very thin, and there was very little Tendo source. Yi Xian nodded, "Then Miss Xue, get ready, we will leave together." Xue Jingfei glanced at Yi Xian, "We are ready, we can leave at any time." Yi Xian thought about it, and then said, "Miss Shangguan, after our people come here, let them contact the people here and find those with good talent. Ask them if they are willing to go to the chaotic universe. Don't force them." At this point, he paused for a moment, and then said, "Don't give up even if your talent isn't good. A person's achievements are not measured by talent alone." Shangguan Xian nodded, "I understand, I will arrange all of this." Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, he suddenly raised his head, frowned, and then transformed into a ray of sword light that shot into the sky. At this moment, Xue Jingfei suddenly said, "I'll go take a look." After saying that, she also shot into the sky. Seeing Xue Jingfei follow, Zhaomu didn't hesitate at all and directly followed. Shangguan Xian looked at the void in the sky and frowned slightly. In the void, Yi Xian stopped. Not far in front of him stood a woman. The woman wore a white robe and had a wine gourd hanging on her waist. She looked valiant and formidable. Yi Xian's expression was very solemn. The woman in front of him gave him a very, very dangerous feeling. And the woman in front of him was just a clone. A clone actually gave him this kind of feeling. At this moment, the executing heaven sword at Yi Xian's waist suddenly trembled violently, as if saying something. P.S. At this moment, the monthly votes in everyone's mouth trembled violently, as if saying something. What are you saying? Say quickly vote, end of this chapter. Chapter 673. Seeing the executing heaven sword tremble, Yi Xian frowned slightly. He looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. "You know her?" The executing heaven sword trembled slightly, then floated in front of the woman in the distance. The woman glanced at the executing heaven sword, then her gaze fell on Yi Xian. She just stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, "Senior, you know me?" The woman suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She didn't say anything, just continued to stare at Yi Xian. Yi Xian felt very uncomfortable being stared at. At this moment, the woman suddenly turned her head. Not far in front of her stood a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked at the woman with an incomparably solemn expression. "May I ask if you are the Sword Martial School's ancestral master?" The woman looked at the middle-aged man, but didn't speak. Seeing that the woman didn't speak, the middle-aged man hurriedly bowed deeply. "I am Black Yellow Great World's Northern King's chief guest, Li Suifeng." Northern King. Yi Xian's face sank. Someone from Black Yellow Great World had actually come here. Were they looking for him? The woman ignored Li Suifeng and looked at Yi Xian again. As she looked at him, her gaze suddenly became somewhat complicated. The look in her eyes couldn't be described with words. On the other hand, Yi Xian was secretly on the alert. Compared to Black-Yellow Great World's Li Suifeng, he was more afraid of this woman. The woman in front of him gave him the feeling that she was unfathomable. At this moment, Li Suifeng suddenly said, "Senior, are you also interested in this Yi Xian?" The woman looked at Li Suifeng. Li Suifeng said solemnly, "Senior, this Yi Xian has killed countless experts of my northern territory. It can be said that our northern territory is absolutely irreconcilable with him." As he said this, his expression changed because a powerful aura directly enveloped him. Li Suifeng was shocked. "Senior, you," the woman looked at Li Suifeng. The latter was about to speak, but at this moment, the woman raised her hand and punched. Boom! Without warning, Li Suifeng's body directly exploded. As for Li Suifeng's soul, he instantly retreated 10,000 zhang away. Yi Xian was stunned. Li Suifeng was also dumbfounded. He looked at the woman, and the woman looked at Yi Xian. She just looked at Yi Xian, and gradually, her body became more and more illusory. Just as she was about to turn completely illusory, she suddenly said, "I will come and find you." As soon as she finished speaking, she disappeared. "Looking for me?" Yi Xian frowned. Was he here to cause trouble for him? Suddenly, Li Suifeng spoke in a low voice, "Yi Xian, I never expected that you would even alarm the founding ancestor of the sword martial school." Yi Xian looked at Li Suifeng. "What is this sword martial gate?" Li Suifeng sneered and said, "The sword martial school is located in the central mainland region of the Black-Yellow Great World. The people in this sect are all cultivators of both sword and martial arts. They are the top 3 sects in the central mainland. Moreover, the sect master of the Divine Martial School resides in the Seal Pavilion of the Black-Yellow Great World. Do you know about the Seal Pavilion? There are 9 statues in the Seal Pavilion, and these 9 people are all extraordinary geniuses and experts in the history of the Black-Yellow Great World. The Sword Martial School's sect master is one of them." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "I'm not bad as well. Do I have the qualifications to enter and have a statue erected there?" The corners of Li Suifeng's mouth twitched slightly, and then he looked coldly at Yi Xian. "City Governor Yi, can you please have some idea?" Yi Xian shrugged, and then he said, "She said she was looking for me. Perhaps she saw that I'm an extraordinary genius and wants to take me as her last disciple." Li Suifeng sneered, "What kind of dream are you having in broad daylight?" As he spoke, he pointed down. "Do you know who the founder of the Prairie Flame sect is?" Yi Xian shook his head, "I don't." Li Suifeng said, "The founder of the Prairie Flame sect is from the Sword Martial School. Slaughtering the Prairie Flame sect is equivalent to declaring war on the Sword Martial School." Yi Xian's face remained emotionless. "Are you done?" Li Suifeng's eyes narrowed slightly. "You want to kill me?" Yi Xian said, "Isn't that obvious?" As soon as he finished speaking, the soul suppression sword suddenly appeared in his grasp. A sword howl resounded. At the instant he saw the soul suppression sword, Li Suifeng's expression instantly changed drastically, and then he turned around and fled. Meanwhile, the soul suppression sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly flew forward. Hiss! A ray of light pierced through Li Suifeng in the distance. In an instant, Li Suifeng was absorbed by the soul suppression sword. However, Li Suifeng crushed a transmission talisman at the moment he was absorbed. Meanwhile, Soul's excited voice resounded in Yi Xian's mind, "Young master, this soul is great. It's great." Yi Xian roared with laughter, "It's great. You'll live well with me in the future." Soul hurriedly said, "All right." Yi Xian smiled and then looked at the executing heaven sword in front of him. After the woman left, the executing heaven sword's mood became somewhat gloomy. Yi Xian gently touched the executing heaven sword and then said, "Was she one of your former masters?" The executing heaven sword trembled and then returned to the prison pagoda. Inside the prison pagoda, Xiao Ling came in front of the celestial sword. She glanced at the executing heaven sword. "Little Zhu, I'm going to attack the 8th floor. Are you interested?" Executing heaven sword, outside. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then he turned and looked at Shengguan Xian, and the other two women not far away. Return to Divine Nation. Return to Divine Nation. Shengguan Xian nodded and looked at Shui Jingfei. Miss Shui, let your people come over. Shui Jingfei nodded and turned to leave. Shengguan Xian walked in front of Yi Xian and said softly, I'm afraid it won't just be people from the north who will come to the chaotic universe in the future. Yi Xian smiled bitterly, I'm sorry. Shengguan Xian shook her head, without you, they won't let go of the chaotic universe. Yi Xian looked up at the distant starry sky and said softly, that woman just now was very strong. That woman just now gave him a very strange feeling. It should be said that it was a very special feeling, but he couldn't describe it specifically. At this moment, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The black-clothed man bowed slightly, Divine Master, we couldn't catch the Burning Prairie sect master. Should we continue to chase? Yi Xian shook his head, no need. Let the people from Celestial Arcanum sect find this person's whereabouts and keep track of his movements. The black-clothed man bowed slightly and turned to leave. Yi Xian looked at the end of the sky and said softly, Black-Yellow Great World. So far, what the Black-Yellow Great World had shown could be said to be the tip of the iceberg. And what he was facing now was not the entire Black-Yellow Great World, but just the north. And he knew that one day, he would have to face the entire Black-Yellow Great World. And there was also Shao Qi. He had to say that at this moment, he really missed Shao Qi. That super confident little girl. In her eyes, even the Black-Yellow Great World was nothing. And until now, there was no news of her. At this moment, Shui Jingfei came not far in front of him, and behind Shui Jingfei was a group of Yinyang sect powerhouses. Yi Xian nodded, let's go. As his voice fell, the crowd. They set off for the chaotic universe. On the back of the golden dragon, Yi Xian sat cross-legged. Not far from him were Shengguan Xian, and Zhao Mu, while Shui Jingfei was on the other side. Yi Xian closed his eyes slightly. He took out a Dao-grade sword and inserted it into his body, and began to absorb the sword. Cultivate. Breakthrough. Now, he would choose to devour the sword whenever he had time. Devouring the sword could improve his own cultivation. And now, he was eager to improve his strength. His strength was too weak. Because he was facing the entire Black-Yellow Great World. Seeing that Yi Xian was cultivating, Shengguan Xian, and Zhao Mu did not disturb him. Shengguan Xian, sat aside, took out a desk, and began to organize all kinds of documents. Whether it was Shao Qi or Yi Xian, they were actually in charge of everything. The one who was really in charge was Shengguan Xian, It could be said that many of the internal affairs of the Divine Nation were handled by Shengguan Xian, It was also because of this that the status of the counselors beside the Divine Lord was very high. Previously, when Nangong Wan was driven back to the Eastern Barren Territory by Shao Qi, the status of the entire Nangong family could be said to have plummeted, and now, the most respected family in the Divine Nation was undoubtedly the Shengguan family, because the 2 generations of Divine Lords had put Shengguan Xian, in an important position. About an hour later, everyone entered the chaotic universe. And just as they entered the chaotic universe, a black-clothed man appeared in front of Yi Xian. The black-clothed man said in a low voice, Divine Lord, that Mo Shanqing has gone to the Black-Yellow Great World. He may be going to the Sword Martial School in the Black-Yellow Great World. Sword Martial School. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Mo Shanqing's purpose should be to rely on the Sword Martial School and then wait for an opportunity to come back for revenge. The black-clothed man suddenly said, Divine Lord, should we chase after him? Sword Martial School. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then shook his head, no need. The black-clothed man bowed slightly and quietly left. At this time, concubine Shui Jingfei came in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Shengguan Xian, Miss Shengguan, help them settle down. Remember, the girls of the Yinyang sect have a special cultivation. Don't let others find trouble with them, just say that I said it. Shengguan Xian nodded, understood. After saying that, she turned and left with concubine Shui Jingfei. After the two women left, Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu. Miss Zhao, will you live in Order City? Zhao Mu glanced at Yi Xian, then turned and left. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, then he called Yi Ling out. During this period of time, Yi Ling had been cultivating with Ah Yu and Yan Jia. It has to be said that under the guidance of the two women, Yi Ling's cultivation had really advanced by leaps and bounds. She was now a peak emperor realm. Yi Xian said, do you still remember what you promised others? Yi Ling nodded, brother, I will establish an immortal Dao sect in Order City now, is that okay? Yi Xian smiled, naturally. If you need anything, just look for big sister Shengguan, understand? Yi Ling smiled sweetly, okay. After saying that, she leaped off the golden dragon and headed towards Order City. Looking at Yi Ling below, the smile on Yi Xian's face gradually froze. Yi Ling. Sister. She was the most important person in his life. He would never allow anyone to hurt her. Absolutely not. Yi Xian turned and looked towards the depths of the starry sky. He slowly clenched his right hand and said softly, Black Yellow Great World. Laozi will fight you to the end. After saying that, he turned and left. However, he hadn't taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped and said, no, Laozi has to call for help. I need help. Chapter 674. God Nation, Order City. Inside the temple, Yi Xian sat quietly. Devour. After returning to the Order City, Yi Xian continued to devour swords. He didn't lack swords at all. He didn't lack swords of the Dao realm. With his current wealth, he could use it for a long, long time. Not to mention that he was now the king of God Nation and could mobilize countless resources. Especially the palace treasury that Shao Qi had left behind, that wealth was amazing. However, he didn't touch it. That was Shao Qi's. He had to wait for Shao Qi to come back. Inside the temple, Yi Xian absorbed the swords crazily. His aura was also skyrocketing. About 3 days later. In the hall, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. Boom! A powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body, causing the entire hall to tremble. Yi Xian took a deep breath and a turbid air floated out of his mouth. Supreme Realm. Now he had reached the Supreme Realm, and if he went further, he would be in the Sage Realm. In other words, he wasn't far from the Emperor Realm. Now that he had recultivated in adversity, if he reached the Emperor Realm, he would definitely be different from ordinary Emperor Realm powerhouses. Of course, he could easily kill Emperor Realm powerhouses now. His current strength couldn't be measured by normal realms. After a while, Yi Xian walked out of the temple. Outside the temple, Shengguan Xian had been waiting for a long time. Yi Xian looked at Shengguan Xian, what's wrong? Shengguan Xian, said solemnly, there's news of His Majesty. Shao Qi. Yi Xian said solemnly, speak. At this time, Celestial Arcanum sect master appeared in front of Yi Xian and said solemnly, we found out through Elysium that the person who took His Majesty away might be a mysterious force in the black-yellow great world called Dao Sect. Dao Sect? Yi Xian frowned slightly, do you have detailed information about this force? Celestial Arcanum sect master shook his head, no. This force was extremely mysterious in the Xianhuang Great World. Everyone only knew that the people of this force were extremely mysterious. They almost never participated in the worldly battles of the Xianhuang Great World. However, no one dared to question their strength. In the Xianhuang Great World, there is a Xianhuang Divine Martial Leaderboard. The first and second place on the leaderboard belong to the Dao sect. At this point, he paused for a moment and continued, although the Dao sect isn't the number one power in the Xuanhuan Great World, there's a saying in the Xuanhuan Great World. Although they aren't number one, the number one doesn't dare to offend them. Taoism. Yi Xian said solemnly, do you have any specific information about them? The Tianji sect head hesitated for a moment before replying, yes, but we have to go to a certain place. After our men went there, they never returned. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, where is it? The Celestial Arcanum sect leader said, Thousand Chance City. This city isn't too far from here, and the people from that sect have appeared in Thousand Chance City before. This Thousand Chance City might be their territory, because our people don't even need to talk about entering, just getting close to this place would cause them to disappear. Thousand Chance City. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, I'll make a trip there. The Celestial Arcanum sect head looked at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a moment before saying, the old man doesn't recommend God Lord to take the risk. If something happens to you, our God nation will collapse. Now that the God nation didn't have Shao Qi, if something happened to Yi Xian, it would undoubtedly be a disaster for the God nation. What the God nation needed the most now was a person like Yi Xian who could hold the fort. Don't think that the God nation was harmonious. If there wasn't someone who could hold the fort, the God nation would immediately fall into chaos. The human heart was the most complicated thing. Yi Xian smiled faintly, it's fine. If I want to leave, they won't be able to stop me. He wasn't bragging. With the immeasurable sword, he believed that as long as he wanted to run, ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to catch him. And it wasn't normal, unless the other party had an expert like the Demon Lord. The Celestial Arcanum sect head wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, it's fine, I'll go personally. With that, he looked at Shengguan Xian, I'll leave the God nation's matters to you for the time being. Shengguan Xian, said solemnly, it's best not to take risks. Yi Xian smiled, if I can't beat them, I'll run. Shengguan Xian, Yi Xian looked at the Celestial Arcanum sect head, where's Qinji City? The Celestial Arcanum sect head was silent. Yi Xian smiled, don't you know my ability? If I want to run, ordinary people can't do anything to me. But we don't know the exact situation of Shao Qi, so I have to go. The Celestial Arcanum sect head was silent for a moment, then he pointed his finger and a scroll appeared in front of Yi Xian, this is the route. Yi Xian nodded, I'll leave the God nation's matters to the two of you, wait for my news. Also, if someone from the Xianhuang Great World comes, be sure to inform me, understand? Shengguan Xian nodded, understood. Yi Xian nodded slightly, then turned into a sword light and disappeared at the end of the sky. Shengguan Xian, looked at the end of the sky and said softly, he and his majesty are really friends. The Celestial Arcanum sect head nodded, both of them are swordsmen, they focus on the pursuit of the heart, so neither of them will play those tricks. Also, can't you see? Our city lord Yi really doesn't have much interest in the Divine Lord position. If it wasn't for his majesty, he might not have come to be the Divine Lord. Shengguan Xian nodded. After spending some time with Yi Xian, she found that Yi Xian didn't have much desire for power besides being greedy for money. And even if he was greedy for money, he didn't embezzle the God nation's treasury and Shao Qi's treasury. Not a single cent. This was something she didn't expect. After a moment, Shengguan Xian looked up at the sky and said softly, I hope everything is safe. At the end of the sky, Yi Xian flew on his sword, but this time, he didn't bring the golden dragon. Because it was too ostentatious. This time, his purpose was to inquire about Shao Qi's news. In the starry sky, Yi Xian flew on his sword and disappeared into the depths of the vast starry sky. About 2 hours later, Yi Xian finally arrived at Qinji City. Qinji City was not in the starry sky, but on a continent. This continent had no name, and this continent, for some reason, only had one city. It was Qinji City. Celestial Arcanum sect had very little information about this Qinji City, because every time their people got close to this Qinji City, they would disappear for no reason. Obviously, this place was not simple. Yi Xian used the chaos qi to hide himself, and then quietly came to the gate of Qinji City. There were people walking in the city, but there were only a few people. And the clothes of these people were very different from normal people. These people wore animal skins, and there were many ornaments made of similar demon beast bones hanging on their bodies. Not the human race? Yi Xian frowned slightly. He quietly walked in. The buildings in the city were also different from other cities. Most of the buildings in this city were simple tents. Primitive people. These 3 words came to Yi Xian's mind. A long, long time ago, when humans first appeared, at that time, humans lived in caves, and then slowly turned into simple shacks. Yi Xian glanced around. He had to say that these people in front of him looked more and more like primitive people. Yi Xian continued to move forward, and soon, he came to the city center. There were more people in the city center. Moreover, Yi Xian found that these people's aura was a bit strong. Physical strength. Pure physical strength. Several of them even had Emperor Realm physical strength. Very extraordinary. Yi Xian continued to move forward, and soon, he came to a palace, which was also the only palace in this city, and this palace was also a bit simple. Yi Xian was about to go in, but at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian stopped right away. The middle-aged man looked right in front of him. Yi Xian's face sunk. Although he was invisible, he knew that the man was looking at him. He was noticed. He could even notice the chaotic energy. Yi Xian didn't hide anymore, and he appeared right away. After Yi Xian appeared, the middle-aged man was expressionless. Who are you? Yi Xian said, Chaotic Universe, God Country. Chaotic Universe? The middle-aged man frowned. What are you doing here? Yi Xian looked at him. He waved his right hand and Seven's portrait appeared in front of him. Find her. When he saw Seven's portrait, his eyes squinted. In the next moment, he punched towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian was prepared for this. He slashed down with his sword. Hong. This sword slashed down, and he retreated 1,000 feet. As soon as he landed on the ground beneath him collapsed. Yi Xian's expression was extremely solemn. His physical strength was so strong, much stronger than his own. In other words, his physical strength was probably above Emperor Realm. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. You know where she is. The middle-aged man was expressionless. He suddenly vanished, and in the next moment, a powerful aura swept towards him like a storm. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He dashed forward and slashed down with his sword. Pust. A sword hum resounded. In the next moment, the middle-aged man was pushed back by Yi Xian's sword. The middle-aged man glanced at his right hand, and there was a deep wound on it. It was caused by executing Heaven's sword. The middle-aged man looked at executing Heaven's sword in Yi Xian's hand. Good sword. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man, and his expression became even more solemn. He couldn't believe that this person actually used his physical body to block his executing Heaven's sword. What sort of physical body is that? Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Where did you take little Seven? The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian. It's not something you can interfere in. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. She's my friend, so I'm definitely interfering in this. As soon as he finished speaking, Qinshi suddenly charged forward and roared furiously. In the next moment, a ray of bright light slashed down from above the middle-aged man's head. The middle-aged man didn't retreat, and he charged forward instead and directly collided with Yi Xian's sword. Rumble. An explosion resounded as both Yi Xian and the middle-aged man were pushed back repeatedly. However, the middle-aged man stopped after moving 300 m back while Yi Xian moved over 600 m back. After he stopped, Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corners of his mouth, and then he gazed at the middle-aged man. Let me see if your soul is as formidable as well. As soon as he finished speaking, executing Heaven's sword transformed into soul-suppressing sword. The middle-aged man's face fell when he saw the soul-suppressing sword. Why do you have so many good swords? And one that targets the soul. When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Yi Xian. We don't need external objects to fight one-on-one. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Today is the 1st, so everyone must have a lot of monthly votes. Don't hesitate, it's me, the most handsome kid in the world. Chapter 675. I won't use any external objects. Yi Xian's face darkened. How can you say such shameless words? I'm a swordsman. You think I won't use a sword? Fight you with my fists? Are you still human? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. That sword of yours isn't an ordinary sword. It's not fair. Yi Xian said indifferently, your realm is so much higher than mine, and your physical body is so much stronger than mine. Is that fair? The middle-aged man was silent for a moment before saying, you won't use those two swords. I'll fight you with one hand. Yi Xian smiled. You don't have to use one hand either. Let's make a bet. I won't use these two swords to fight you one-on-one. If I win, you'll tell me where she is. How about that? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, he nodded. Deal. Yi Xian immediately put away the executing heaven sword and soul-suppressing sword. The middle-aged man said, let's go somewhere else. With that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian didn't think too much and followed him. Soon, the middle-aged man brought Yi Xian to a training field. The training field was huge, and there was a thin light screen around it. In the middle of the training field, the middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. Attack! Yi Xian stomped his right foot hard. Boom! The entire ground shook violently. In the surroundings, the power of countless earth veins gathered toward him. At the same time, the power of the earth spirit contained in the great Tao Law was released toward Yi Xian. Yi Xian clenched his right hand slowly. Rumble. A powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body. At the sight of this, the middle-aged man's eyes became slightly solemn. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up. The next moment, he punched the middle-aged man. Burial fist. After giving up on the sword, he directly used the Great Tao Law and Burial Fist. These were two of his trump cards. In the face of Yi Xian's punch, the middle-aged man had a solemn expression in his eyes, but he didn't show any fear, nor did he dodge. He took a step forward and blasted his fist out. Heaven-shaking punch. As his voice fell, the two powerful forces directly collided with each other in the most brutal way. Rumble. In an instant, with the two of them as the center, the ground within a 3-kilometer radius was directly shattered, and the thin barrier of light in the surroundings also collapsed at this moment. A powerful force wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing even the space to distort. It was an incomparably terrifying sight. A moment later, the surroundings returned to tranquility. Yi Xian and the middle-aged man looked at each other from afar. Both of them had a trace of blood at the corner of their mouths. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. What kind of punch is that? Yi Xian grinned. Burial fist. Burial fist. The middle-aged man said in a deep voice, very strong. Yi Xian laughed and said, you are also very strong. Come, let's continue. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly rushed out. Bang! His body directly split space apart. Even though his physical body couldn't compare to the middle-aged man, it wasn't inferior to him. Coupled with the fact that he was enhanced by the Grand Tao laws, his physical strength wasn't inferior to the middle-aged man at all. A head-on battle. At the instant that Yi Xian charged forward, the middle-aged man charged forward right after him. Physical combat. Numerous explosions resounded incessantly, and even space itself was trembling violently. In next to no time, the middle-aged man had a slight headache. Because while Yi Xian was engaging him in physical combat, Yi Xian was using his flying swords. Even though these flying swords weren't as sharp as the swords Yi Xian wielded earlier, he didn't dare underestimate them. Because they were aimed at his vital points, so he didn't dare to go head-on against them. Just like that, the middle-aged man was gradually suppressed by Yi Xian because he was enhanced by the flying swords. Bang! Right at this moment, the middle-aged man was suddenly blasted back by a single sword strike from Yi Xian, and he just stopped when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him and smashed his fist towards him. Burial fist. The middle-aged man's expression changed when he saw it was Qin Shi's burial fist again, and he swiftly pressed his arms together before sweeping them forward. Bang! As soon as Yi Xian's fist descended, the middle-aged man was instantly pushed over 1 kilometer back. As soon as he stopped moving, the space behind him instantly shattered apart. At the same time, a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The middle-aged man wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. He slowly opened his palms, and then he suddenly pressed them together. Iron wall. As soon as he finished speaking, a strand of energy suddenly descended from the sky, and it directly surged into his body. Rumble. The middle-aged man's figure shook violently. At the same time, a thin strand of golden light appeared around him. Yi Xian's face fell when he witnessed this scene. The middle-aged man's body has definitely become stronger again. A moment of silence ensued before Yi Xian suddenly charged forward and smashed his fist towards the middle-aged man's face. This time, the middle-aged man actually didn't dodge or resist, and he just allowed Yi Xian's fist to strike his face. Bang! The middle-aged man moved over 10 m back, but Yi Xian had retreated explosively by over 1 kilometer. After he stopped moving, Yi Xian glanced at his right hand. At this moment, his right hand was numb, and at least 80% of the strength of that punch had been reflected back at him. Yi Xian gazed at the middle-aged man. Not only has this man's body improved by a few levels, he's even able to reflect the strength of his attack. Is he even human? He's a devil, right? The middle-aged man walked slowly towards Yi Xian. The ground trembled with every single step he took, and the formidable strength and physical defense he possessed were sufficient to instill despair in others. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. That's probably a divine technique, right? The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian and said, "My ultimate technique isn't an external object." An ultimate technique. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Alright, then I'll use my ultimate technique as well. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his right hand, and a sword flew into his grasp. In the next moment, monstrous sword energy suddenly swept out from within him. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man and grinned. 1. When he uttered the word 1, the surrounding space collapsed directly. Yi Xian said again, sword. As soon as he uttered the word, buzz. The sound of a sword soared into the sky, and in an instant, the entire Qianji city began to crumble inch by inch. At this time, the smile on Yi Xian's face had become somewhat ferocious. None. As soon as he uttered the word, a sword energy had swept across the entire Qianji city, and the space within a radius of nearly 100,000 feet began to disappear and be annihilated inch by inch. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged man's eyes were filled with horror. This time, there was no fear in his eyes, but panic. Just as Yi Xian was about to utter the last word, the middle-aged man suddenly said, "I admit defeat." Admit defeat? Yi Xian was slightly stunned. This guy admits defeat? The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian and said again, "I admit defeat." In that instant, he had truly felt death looming over him. If he didn't admit defeat, he knew that his physical body would definitely not be able to withstand the sword that Yi Xian was about to release. He definitely could not withstand it. Yi Xian put away his sword, and in an instant, the surrounding sword energy disappeared directly. He didn't want to use this immeasurable sword. This immeasurable sword didn't have much of a side effect. No, it should be said that there was basically no side effect, but the consumption was a bit big. Now that the middle-aged man admitted defeat, he would naturally stop. One must know that the purpose of this time was to find Shaoqi, not to kill. Seeing that Yi Xian stopped, the middle-aged man immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He glanced at Yi Xian. What sword skill was that just now? Yi Xian said, "Immeasurable sword. I created it myself." The middle-aged man was stunned. Created it yourself? Are you sure? Yi Xian said seriously, "Of course. This sword skill was created by me when I was 18 years old. I'm a swordsman, I won't lie." The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. Are you sure that you created it yourself? Yi Xian said indifferently, let's not talk about this. You've lost. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your promise. I lost. The middle-aged man's face instantly sank. After a moment, he said in a deep voice, you shouldn't have looked for her. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. Why? You want to go back on your words? The middle-aged man went silent. Yi Xian's expression gradually turned cold. You can't afford to lose? The middle-aged man shook his head. Young man, first tell me, who is she to you? Yi Xian said, friend. Friend. Hearing this, the middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian, and after a moment of silence, he said, since you're her friend, then there's no harm in telling you. We'll take her away and won't hurt her. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, why did you take her away? The middle-aged man shook his head, I can't tell you. Yi Xian frowned slightly, and the middle-aged man said, don't worry, we won't hurt her. On the contrary, we're protecting her. Protecting her? Yi Xian said in a low voice, what do you mean? The middle-aged man shook his head, it's none of your business. All you have to know is that we won't hurt her. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian, her identity is special. If she stays at the place you're from, then she'll be in danger, and you'll be in danger as well. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled, I'll be in danger as well? What do you mean? The middle-aged man's face was expressionless. You're that Yi Xian from the chaotic universe, right? Yi Xian nodded. The middle-aged man said, according to the information we have, some mysterious powers have started to pay attention to you, and they might be about to act against you. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, which mysterious powers? The middle-aged man said, go back. We don't want to have any entanglements with you. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, and then he said, can I see her? The middle-aged man shook his head, she's already in the Xianhuang Great World. Don't worry, we won't hurt her. Just take care of yourself. As he finished speaking, he turned and left. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the middle-aged man. He looked at him, I want to know that she's fine. Otherwise, I won't let this matter rest. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, do you know what you're doing? Yi Xian laughed savagely, what am I doing? I have enemies all over the universe. Do you think I'll be afraid of you? So what if there's one more of you? The other party was too perfunctory. They wanted to dismiss him with a single sentence that they wouldn't hurt Little Seven? How was that possible? Before he saw Little Seven, he didn't believe anyone. The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian, don't force us. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, either I see her, or you kill me. As the sound of his voice faded, an illusory Shao toss suddenly appeared between his brows. World Prison Pagoda. The moment the World Prison Pagoda appeared, a formless pressure suddenly enveloped the entire thousand-chant city. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, are you crazy? The only sword. Chapter 676. The middle-aged man's expression was extremely unsightly. When Yi Xian took out the World Prison Pagoda, he once again felt the aura of death. World Prison Pagoda. If this fifth-dimensional treasure was activated, its power would not be any lower than the limitless sword. Yi Xian stared at the middle-aged man, his expression fierce. I want to see her, do you understand? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. You'd better not act recklessly. Yi Xian smiled malevolently. It seems that if I don't kill a few people, you guys won't give a damn about me. As his voice fell, he suddenly activated the World Prison Pagoda. In the next instant, a red light enveloped the middle-aged man. At the same time, a large blood-red character, prisoner, appeared above the middle-aged man's head. When this character appeared, the middle-aged man's expression changed. This was the first time he had been so close to death. At this time, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man was dressed very simply. He wore plain clothes and a pair of cloth shoes. With a head full of white hair, he looked very sage-like. The old man looked at the blood-red character, prisoner, above the middle-aged man's head and said softly, "Fifth dimensional." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. "I'll let you see her." Hearing this, Yi Xian looked at the old man. "Really?" The old man nodded. "Really?" Yi Xian waved his right hand and the world prison pagoda disappeared. The blood-red character, prisoner, above the middle-aged man's head also disappeared. The middle-aged man let out a sigh of relief. In that instant, he knew that if Yi Xian did not stop, he would definitely die. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, his eyes filled with dread. This Yi Xian's personal strength was not particularly monstrous, but his treasures were not ordinary. Moreover, each one was more terrifying than the last. Yi Xian looked at the old man. The old man said softly, "That fifth-dimensional treasure is really extraordinary." Yi Xian said softly, "What about her?" The old man nodded. "Follow me." As he said this, he turned and left. Yi Xian followed. Not long after, the old man brought Yi Xian to a secret room. Inside the secret chamber, the old man walked in front of a box. He opened the box and a white light floated out. Soon, a person appeared in the white light. Little 7. Shao Qi was in a cave. She sat cross-legged on the ground like she was cultivating. Yi Xian frowned. "What is this place?" The elder said, "The Xianhuang Great World." Yi Xian said in a low voice, she wouldn't have left the divine kingdom for no reason. He was clear about Seven's personality. She was a responsible person and there was no way she would leave the God Kingdom at such a time. The old man laughed. She didn't want to leave at first, but she had to go with us in the end. Yi Xian asked in a low voice, "Why?" "Because some people have already discovered her. If she doesn't go with us, your God nation will not only have to face the northern region, but the entire black-yellow great world." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. "Especially when the two of you are in the chaos verse. The two of you are more special than the other. If the two of you are in the chaos verse, can the chaos verse withstand it?" Yi Xian's face darkened. The old man spoke as if he and Shao Qi were scourges. The old man said, "You are her friend and you are qualified to be her friend. That is why I let you come here. However, you must understand that her identity is as special as yours. We are taking her away to protect her. As for your chaos verse, she can't go back for now." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Will she never come back?" The old man laughed, "That will depend on her own will." Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Are you from the Taoist sect?" The old man looked at Yi Xian. "Little fellow, we don't want to have any entanglements with you. It's best that you don't interfere in our matters. It's for your own good." Yi Xian said, "I am her friend." The old man fell silent. Yi Xian didn't say anything else. He just turned around and left. Since he knew that Shao Qi was fine, he was relieved. Actually, he had always been very confident in Shao Qi. If Shao Qi hadn't taken the initiative to leave with them, then they would have definitely not taken her away by force. Since Shao Qi had chosen to leave, she definitely had her reasons. Right when Yi Xian was about to leave, the old man suddenly said, "Young man." Yi Xian stopped and turned around to look at the old man. "What is it?" The old man fell silent for a moment, and then he said, "You cultivate the body as well?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man smiled. "We are very proficient in cultivating the body. Moreover, we have some divine techniques related to the body. Are you interested?" Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he asked, "Why?" The old man shook his head. "There is no reason. If you are interested, you can study here for a period of time. Your body will definitely undergo a qualitative transformation." Yi Xian said, "I am interested." He had already seen the body of that middle-aged man. If he had such a strong body, then just thinking about it was exciting. The old man nodded. Follow me. With that, he brought Yi Xian out of the secret room. In a short while, the old man brought Yi Xian to a huge mountain that was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the city. No, it should be called a volcano. As soon as he got close to the volcano, Yi Xian felt a wave of heat. The old man brought Yi Xian to the entrance of the volcano. From his angle, the lava below was surging, and the heat waves were monstrous. It was extremely terrifying. The old man pointed with his finger, and a green pill flew in front of Yi Xian. Consume it. Yi Xian glanced at the green pill, and he didn't think too much about it. He consumed it right away. For an expert of his level, it was impossible for the other party to poison him to death. After consuming the pill, Yi Xian instantly felt a surge of energy in his body, and this energy enveloped his entire body. At this time, the old man looked at the volcano below, jumped down. Jump down? Yi Xian looked at the old man, jump down? The old man said indifferently, your body is at the Emperor realm, why would you be afraid of this mere lava? Yi Xian was silent for a moment, and then he leaped into the boiling lava. As soon as he entered the lava, all his clothes turned into ashes. At the same time, he felt like his body was burning. That feeling wasn't particularly good, but fortunately, his body was strong enough. Therefore, he only felt a little uncomfortable, but it wasn't fatal. At this time, the old man suddenly took out a white jade bottle. He poured it down lightly, and a drop of blood-red bead fell. The moment that drop of blood-red bead fell into the lava, the entire lava boiled. At the same time, a dark red flame suddenly enveloped Yi Xian. Ah! A heart-wrenching scream suddenly resounded from the magma. It was Yi Xian's voice. Ouch! This was what Yi Xian was feeling right now. The moment he was enveloped by the crimson flames, he felt as if his entire body was being torn apart. At this moment, the old man took out a black jade bottle. He poured it down and a drop of black liquid fell from the sky. The moment the black liquid entered the magma immediately exploded. At the same time, a cloud of black gas suddenly enveloped Yi Xian. Ah! Screams rang out incessantly from within the magma. The pain was unbearable. This was what Yi Xian was feeling at the moment. Only now did he realize how fragile his body was. At this moment, he felt pain all over his body, as if his nerves were being pricked by needles. That feeling was too terrifying. He almost jumped out a few times. But he still withstood it. He knew that this might be a good opportunity for him to improve his physical body. If he gave up on this chance, he might not have many chances like this in the future. He didn't know why the old man wanted to help him, but he didn't want to care about that. He would take the benefits first. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared by the old man's side. It was the middle-aged man who had fought Yi Xian earlier. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and spoke in a low voice, Elder, why are you helping him? The old man was expressionless. This person is rather special and is good friends with His Majesty. He might be of help to us in the future. The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment and said, even so, we shouldn't use such noble king and beast blood. The old man spoke softly, his physical body has already reached the Emperor realm. Ordinary things won't be of any use to him. Since we want him to owe us a favor, we naturally have to make him owe us a bigger one. The middle-aged man nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. The old man looked at Yi Xian and spoke softly, this person's talent might be inferior to His Majesty, but his fate is extremely complicated, even more so than His Majesty. No matter what, let's make him owe us a favor first. As for the future, let's talk about it in the future. The middle-aged man nodded, this person isn't simple indeed, especially that sword technique that he created. The old man thought of the sword technique that Yi Xian had displayed earlier. The old man shook his head and smiled, he said that he created it himself. Do you believe that? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, of course I don't. This fellow has a glib tongue and doesn't seem like a good person. The old man spoke softly, he's indeed quite different from other swordsmen. At this moment, the magma below suddenly boiled violently, and the red light and black gas on Yi Xian's body suddenly entered Yi Xian's body. Bang! In an instant, the magma around Yi Xian vanished completely, and Yi Xian's body started to squirm. The old man spoke softly from above, as long as he can endure it, his physical body will undergo an earth-shattering transformation. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian with a trace of envy in his eyes. His bloodline has been reversed by the humanoid king's blood. This fellow is really lucky. The old man spoke softly. How much he can absorb will depend on his own fortune. At this moment, there was a sudden change below, and the blood in Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled violently. Bang! A red light suddenly shot out from Yi Xian's body towards the sky. In an instant, that red light rushed into the horizon, and the entire horizon was instantly dyed blood red. The old man's face was filled with disbelief. How can this humanoid king's blood be finished? Is this bad? Yesterday's monthly votes were exceptionally few, and I couldn't help but sink into contemplation. Why is it like this? Is it because I'm handsome? The only sword. Chapter 677. Below him, Yi Xian's entire body started to tremble madly as if he was having an epileptic fit. It was extremely shocking. Moreover, the blood within his body seemed to have been stimulated by something, and it flowed madly within his body. At the same time, strands of powerful bloodline energy ceaselessly stimulated his body. The old man's expression was extremely gloomy. There's something wrong with his bloodline. Bloodline. Below him, Yi Xian's entire face started to warp. At this moment, he still had a bit of consciousness, and he felt extremely bitter in his heart. He didn't dare to rashly activate this bloodline energy because he wasn't confident in his ability to control it. But now, the bloodline energy that he'd absorbed earlier had actually tried to change his bloodline, and it had undoubtedly touched the reverse scale of his bloodline. Thus, it had erupted. He was able to sense that his bloodline was getting angry. Yi Xian was speechless to the extreme as well. A bloodline that had even become sentient. Are you trying to kill me? As he sensed that the bloodline energy was becoming more and more frenzied, Yi Xian hurriedly looked at the old man. Help me suppress my bloodline. The old man immediately jumped down and pressed his hand on Yi Xian's shoulder, and a powerful force instantly pressed down upon Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian hurriedly cooperated, and he utilized the profound energy within his body to start suppressing his bloodline. Just like that, after around 2 hours, the bloodline within Yi Xian's body gradually calmed down. The old man heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this scene. He wasn't afraid that Yi Xian's bloodline energy would harm Yi Xian, but he was afraid that Yi Xian's bloodline energy would affect Yi Xian. Because he'd sensed that Yi Xian's mind wasn't normal. Moreover, Yi Xian's body was emanating dense killing intent. He knew that if he didn't suppress Yi Xian's bloodline energy, then Yi Xian might go berserk. Once Yi Xian went berserk, he wasn't fully confident in his ability to suppress it. After all, Yi Xian had quite a few extraordinary treasures in his possession. Especially the World Prison Pagoda. He was extremely fearful of it. Fortunately, Yi Xian had regained his composure. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and they were completely blood red. The old man's expression changed when he witnessed this scene, and he became vigilant. But soon, Yi Xian's eyes returned to normal. Yi Xian stood up. As soon as he stood up, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Yi Xian was stunned. Then, he looked at his own body. After a while, he said excitedly, "Divine Realm. Divine Realm." His body had advanced from the Emperor Realm to the God Realm. Yi Xian clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful force gathered on his right arm. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. His current physical defense and strength were not just a little bit stronger than before. Now, he was completely confident that he could kill a deity realm expert with a single punch. Power. Yi Xian gazed at the middle-aged man who stood nearby. The middle-aged man spoke indifferently. What? You want to fight me? Yi Xian chuckled. How about we spar? He wanted to test exactly how strong his body was right now. The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian. All right, but you're not allowed to use your sword. Earlier, when he fought Yi Xian had used his fists and sword at the same time, and it was too annoying. Moreover, if Yi Xian were to use the executing heaven sword, then it would be even more impossible for him to fight. Yi Xian roared with laughter. All right, we'll fight him with our fists. The middle-aged man nodded, and then he and Yi Xian arrived at an arena, and the arena was in a mess. The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian. Just make do with it. Yi Xian nodded. I'm making a move. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. Bang! The space and the surroundings trembled violently. On the other hand, the middle-aged man vanished as well, and he smashed his fist towards Yi Xian. Bang! Bang! It didn't take long for numerous explosions to resound. Yi Xian didn't utilize his sword this time, so he could be said to be on par with the middle-aged man. Of course, when Yi Xian utilized the Fist of Burial, he would gain an even greater advantage. After his body attained the god rank realm, the might of his Fist of Burial had increased by at least a few times. If he didn't utilize the Fist of Burial, then he would be on par with the middle-aged man. Just like that, the two of them fought for an entire hour, and they were equally matched in the end. After Yi Xian stopped, he walked over to the old man and cupped his fists. Thank you. The old man glanced at Yi Xian, and then he said, there might be a huge movement in the Northern Territory soon. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. A huge movement? The old man nodded. They've failed numerous times, and the Northern Territory won't allow themselves to fail again this time. Because this is their last chance. If they can't defeat all of you, then other powers will come to your chaotic universe. When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Yi Xian. Don't underestimate the Northern Territory, especially the king of the Northern Territory. He was said to be the most monstrous genius in the history of the Northern Territory, and no one knows exactly how strong he is now. The king of the Northern Territory. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you for the reminder, senior. The old man nodded slightly. Let's go. Yi Xian cupped his fists once more. Senior, until we meet again. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and flew off on his sword, and he vanished into the horizon in the blink of an eye. The middle-aged man by the old man's side suddenly spoke softly. Can he stop the king of the Northern Territory? The old man spoke indifferently. It'll depend on his own fortune. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. But it didn't take long for him to stop and turn around to look towards the distance. Not far away on the city wall stood a middle-aged man in a white robe. The middle-aged man gazed at the old man and grinned. You're from the Taoist sect, right? The old man glanced at the white-robed man. Fuck off. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand. Boom. Not far away, the white-robed man was sent flying thousands of feet away. At this moment, a man in black suddenly appeared behind the white-robed man. The man in black was about to make a move, but was stopped by the white-robed man. From afar, the old man's voice suddenly came. Within 3 breaths, if you're still in the city, you'll die. The white-robed man did not hesitate. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. In the distance, the old man spoke softly. That little guy is in danger. That's not right either. At the end of the horizon, the white-robed man stopped. He looked at the distant Thousand Opportunities city, his eyes extremely solemn. Beside him, a man in black suddenly said, This Taoist sect's people are really arrogant. The white-robed man said indifferently, They have this strength, but what makes this sovereign curious is, why did they let the Yi Xian leave the city safely? As he said this, he turned around. Have you arranged it? The man in black nodded. Yes, it's arranged. The white-robed man nodded. Let's go. With that, he turned around and left. After leaving Thousand Opportunities City, Yi Xian headed straight for the chaotic universe. The old man's words gave him a bad feeling. The black-yellow Great World's northern region must be up to something big. He had to rush back to the chaotic universe as soon as possible. Not long after, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He frowned slightly, and the surroundings were silent. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed to the side. Chi! The sword light slashed down, and space was directly torn apart. At this moment, the scene in the middle of the battlefield suddenly distorted. Yi Xian was expressionless. The space doctrine suddenly appeared between his eyebrows. The next second, the distorted space around him gradually calmed down. At the moment, there were 4 men in black standing around him. Their figures were erratic and unpredictable, like ghosts and spirits. Yi Xian said indifferently, "Northern region?" The 4 did not speak. Suddenly, the 4 of them disappeared, and the space around Yi Xian was suddenly cut apart layer by layer. Yi Xian did not waste any time and smashed his fist down. Burial fist. As this fist smashed down, the surrounding space directly collapsed. On the other hand, the 4 men who had just approached Yi Xian were instantly blasted away. At the instant that they were blasted away, 4 flying swords suddenly flew out and slashed at the 4 men in black. Meanwhile, the 4 men in black suddenly vanished. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He glanced at the surroundings, and then he circulated the space Tao law. In an instant, the space around him trembled violently, and then 4 figures appeared around him. Yi Xian turned around and swung his sword. Chi! The head of one of the men in black flew into the air. Yi Xian turned around to look at the 3 men in black, and they immediately retreated explosively. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. Such weaklings? Who are you looking down on? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. A sword howl tore through the sky. Chi! In the distance, space was directly torn apart by Yi Xian's sword. At the same time, the head of one of the men in black flew into the air, and blood sprayed out like a fountain. There were only 2 black-clothed men left. They were about to attack when a voice suddenly resounded from not too far away. "There's no need for that. All of you aren't a match for him." Yi Xian looked over and saw a white-robed man walking over from afar. Yi Xian gazed at the white-robed man, and the latter grinned. "You're Yi Xian?" Yi Xian suddenly vanished, and then he slashed down with a raise of his sword. The white-robed man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he flicked his sleeve. Bang! The white-robed man retreated by a few meters while Yi Xian returned to where he stood earlier. At this moment, there was a deep and bloody mark on the white-robed man's right hand. The white-robed man's face instantly sank. He gazed at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly vanished. A sword howl reverberated through the sky. In the distance, the white-robed man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. This punch smashed directly onto Yi Xian's sword light. Rumble. The sword light shattered, and then Yi Xian was instantly pushed over 100 m back. On the other hand, another deep and bloody mark had appeared on the white-robed man's right hand, and his bones were visible. The white-robed man's face was extremely gloomy, and there was a trace of vigilance in his eyes as he gazed at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. "Your sword." He'd just spoken up to hear when Yi Xian suddenly vanished, and then a ray of light flashed. The white-robed man crossed his arms and used them to block Yi Xian's sword. Bang! The white-robed man was instantly pushed over 100 m back by Yi Xian's sword, and when he stopped moving, the heads of 2 black-clothed men in front of him had flown into the air. The white-robed man gazed at Yi Xian. Yi. He'd just spoken a single word when Yi Xian suddenly vanished again. The white-robed man's face instantly warped when he witnessed this scene. "Can you let me finish?" Sword strike. Bang! The white-robed man was blasted flying again. The only sword. Chapter 678. Yi Xian did not stop this time. He slashed at the white-robed man fiercely. He held the executing heaven sword in his hand. Therefore, the white-robed man did not dare to fight head-on like before. Because of this, the white-robed man retreated again and again. In the end, he retreated tens of thousands of feet. Flying swords flew around Yi Xian and the white-robed man. At this moment, the white-robed man suddenly squatted down and put his hands together. In the next moment, he suddenly jerked forward. Rumble. The surrounding space trembled. Yi Xian was directly thrown hundreds of feet away. The white-robed man stared at Yi Xian. At this moment, his expression was incomparably ferocious. I really underestimated you. I never thought that your physical body would actually. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Chi. A sword arrived. Boom. The white-robed man was instantly slashed and there was another deep wound on his body. The white-robed man looked up at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him and slashed again. This time, it was not the executing heaven sword but the soul-suppressing sword. This sword slash, the white-robed man could not dodge at all. He could only take it head-on. He crossed his arms, boom. The white-robed man instantly retreated hundreds of feet away. As soon as he stopped, his expression changed drastically. This was because the soul in his body was actually being torn apart. Soul tearing. The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian in horror. What are you? At this point, his voice stopped abruptly. This was because Yi Xian appeared in front of him again. Yi Xian slashed down again. At this moment, the soul-suppressing sword in his hand had become the executing heaven sword. This sword slash caused the white-robed man's expression to change drastically. He was just about to attack when at this moment, the soul in his body was being torn apart. It was impossible to achieve divine soul unity. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword had already slashed down. Chi. The white-robed man's body was directly cut in half by Yi Xian's sword. The white-robed man's soul was about to escape, but a mysterious force indeed locked him in place. The white-robed man glared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian directly pressed his sword against the white-robed man's soul. The white-robed man was greatly shocked because he discovered that his soul was actually starting to dissipate. Yi Xian looked at the white-robed man. Many people die because they talk too much. The white-robed man stared at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian said, I ask, you answer. If you answer well, I can let you live. The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian and sneered, you underestimate this sovereign too much. This sovereign. Yi Xian suddenly said, all right, I respect you. I won't ask any more. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and slashed with his sword. Chi. The white-robed man's soul was directly absorbed by soul. Yi Xian took the white-robed man's storage ring and left. But before he could take a few steps, a cold light suddenly slashed at the back of his neck. This cold light appeared without warning, and Yi Xian did not even have time to react. Chi. The cold light had just penetrated half an inch into Yi Xian's skin when Yi Xian's entire body disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already hundreds of feet away, and the back of his neck was bleeding profusely. Yi Xian looked not far away, and it was already empty. But he knew who it was. It was the female assassin who had once tried to assassinate him. The Heavenly Gates assassin. Yi Xian closed his eyes slightly, and the space Dao Law appeared between his brows. Soon, the space within a radius of hundreds of thousands of feet suddenly trembled. A moment later, Yi Xian opened his eyes, and the surrounding space returned to normal. The female assassin had already left. If her attack failed, she would escape thousands of miles away. This was what an assassin was like. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian turned around and left. Not long after Yi Xian left, a woman in black suddenly appeared where he had been standing. This person was the Heavenly Gates assassin who had previously attacked Yi Xian. The woman was silent for a moment, and just as she was about to disappear, a sword light suddenly appeared behind her. The woman's expression changed, and she turned around to slash down with her saber. Boom! The woman instantly retreated hundreds of feet. The moment she retreated, she wanted to hide. At this moment, the space around her began to shrink layer by layer, and finally formed a spatial cage. This spatial cage directly trapped the woman. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared in front of the woman. He glanced at her and said, "I know how to hide as well." The woman suddenly made a move, and Yi Xian blocked it with his sword. Bang! The saber in the woman's hand directly shattered, and at the same time, Yi Xian's sword directly pressed against the woman's brows. Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Do you want to live?" The woman was silent. Yi Xian held his sword and gently pushed it forward. The sword penetrated half an inch, and in an instant, blood gushed out of the woman's brows like a fountain. Yi Xian looked at the woman expressionlessly. "Seeing that you're a woman, I'll ask again. Do you want to live?" The woman was silent. Just as Yi Xian was about to stab his sword in, the woman suddenly said, "Yes." Yi Xian was slightly startled. He didn't expect the woman to answer like that. He sheathed his sword and said, "Do you know what to do?" The woman looked at Yi Xian. "I don't know." Yi Xian said, "Follow me." The woman was silent. Yi Xian said, "Hand over a wisp of your soul." The woman was still silent. Yi Xian's expression gradually turned cold. "This is your last chance." The woman opened her palm, and a wisp of her soul flew in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian collected the woman's soul, and then looked at the woman. "Apart from you, is there anyone else in the heavenly gate?" The woman nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "How many?" The woman shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian frowned slightly. The woman said again, "I don't know." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Does the heavenly gate also want that treasure?" The woman nodded. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Besides the heavenly gate, what else do you know?" "About me." The woman was silent for a moment, and then said, "The Sword Martial School is investigating you." The Sword Martial School. Yi Xian thought of the white-robed woman from before. That white-robed woman was the founder of the Sword Martial School. Did she also want that treasure? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "Follow me. Don't show yourself." As his voice fell, he disappeared into thin air. The woman was silent for a long time, and then also disappeared. An hour later, Yi Xian returned to the chaotic universe. Inside the divine palace, Yi Xian sat quietly, and in front of him was Shangguan Yi Xian asked, "How is the matter in the vast universe handled?" Shangguan said, "It has been handled. There are many sects and powerhouses over there, and we have recruited them." Yi Xian nodded, "If they don't want to come, don't force them." Shangguan said, "Understood." As she said, she looked at Yi Xian, "Have you become stronger again?" Yi Xian nodded, "My physical body has broken through." Shangguan smiled slightly, "Congratulations." Yi Xian said softly, "Tell our people to prepare, they should be making a big move." Shangguan hesitated, and then nodded, turned around, and left. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Take me to see the people of the Dao Execution Army." Shangguan looked at Yi Xian, "You want to transfer them?" Yi Xian nodded. Shangguan nodded, "Okay." Yi Xian and Shangguan left the main hall, and under Shangguan lead, the two entered the vast starry sky. In the starry sky, Yi Xian said softly, "They are not in the chaotic universe?" Shangguan shook her head, "No." Yi Xian nodded, and he looked up into the depths of the starry sky. He had a bad feeling. The black-yellow Great World's northern region had failed so many times, and this time, the other side would not hold back. In the past, it could be said that they underestimated the enemy, but now, if the other side still underestimated the enemy, then they were really stupid. And he did not believe that the king of the northern region was a fool. Not long after, Yi Xian and Sheng Wanxian came to a continent. There were very few people on this continent, and the spiritual qi was quite thin. Sheng Wanxian brought Yi Xian to an ancient city. Inside the ancient city, the two came to a restaurant, and next to the door of the restaurant, a man was lying. The man reeked of alcohol, and his clothes were tattered. Yi Xian looked at Sheng Wanxian, and the latter walked in front of the man and said softly, "Yan?" There was no response, and the man was still sleeping. Sheng Wanxian looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Chi! A ray of sword light slashed straight at the man. At this moment, the man's eyes suddenly opened, and then he punched at Yi Xian's sword light. Bang! This punch forcibly blocked Yi Xian's sword light. The man looked at Yi Xian. "You are the Yi Xian?" Sheng Wanxian said solemnly, "Yan, he is now the king of my god nation." The man named Yan sneered, "King of god nation? Is he worthy?" Hearing this, Sheng Wanxian frowned, "Yan, how can you be so rude to a god master?" Yan was expressionless. "What god master is he? I only recognize God Master Wu and Little Seven." Sheng Wanxian wanted to say something, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "There is no need to say anything." Sheng Wanxian looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said, "These members of the Dao Execution Army have their identities recorded in my god nation, right?" Sheng Wanxian nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian pointed at Yan, who was not far away. "From this moment on, delete him from the records." Sheng Wanxian was stunned. Yan looked at Yi Xian, and his eyes narrowed slightly. At this moment, Sheng Wanxian looked at Yi Xian, "God Master, this may be a bit inappropriate." Yi Xian looked at Sheng Wanxian, "Are you the God Master or am I the God Master?" Hearing this, Sheng Wanxian's face suddenly changed. She knew that the person in front of her was angry. Thinking of Nangong Wan's fate, Sheng Wanxian quickly bowed respectfully. This subordinate knows her mistake. Yi Xian was expressionless. "Immediately delete his record." After saying that, he turned around and left. At this moment, Na Yan suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Yan and didn't say anything. Yan stared at Yi Xian and laughed. "Expel me from the Dao Execution Army? Are you joking? When I followed Martial God Master to slaughter Tendo, at that time, your parents weren't even born yet. You." Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Yan's face suddenly changed, and he punched out. Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Chi! The sword fell, and Yan's entire arm flew out. Blood spurted out. Na Yan was stunned. He didn't expect Yi Xian's strength to be so strong. The members of the Dao Execution Army were indeed strong, but no matter how strong they were, they couldn't be stronger than Yi Xian and Shao Qi. Yan stared at Yi Xian. "If you dare to touch me, you..." Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Qi! A sword directly pierced Yan's forehead. Blood sprayed. Yan's eyes opened wide, and they were filled with disbelief. Sheng Wanxian nodded slightly, and her hands were trembling. Meanwhile, Yi Xian sheathed his sword, turned around, and left. Yan suddenly roared, "They will take revenge for me." "You..." A strand of sword light flashed. Hiss! Yan's head flew into the air. At the same time, Yi Xian's voice resounded from afar, "Notify everyone in the Dao Execution Army that anyone who doesn't listen to me, Yi Xian, will be expelled from the Dao Execution Army. If everyone doesn't listen, then immediately disband the Dao Execution Army. If they don't obey, then they can come look for me at any time. Tell them that I'll kill as many as they come." I heard that the live stream industry is doing well recently. I want to give it a try. Perhaps I'll become a great streamer with an annual salary of tens of millions. At the same time, I want to prove to all of you that I can actually rely on my looks to make a living. The Only Sword. Chapter 679. Angry. Shangguan Xian looked at Na Yan's head in silence. She knew that Yi Xian was really angry. She rarely saw Yi Xian angry. This could be said to be the first time. This time, it also allowed her to understand her position and identity. She was Yi Xian's advisor. If she publicly questioned Yi Xian or disobeyed Yi Xian, it would have a significant impact on Yi Xian's prestige. Of course, it was mostly on herself. She would never forget Nangong Wan's fate. After a while, Shangguan Xian turned around and left. After the two returned to the divine nation, Shangguan Xian took out a black ancient book. On the ancient book, there were two blood-red words, Dao Execution. Shangguan Xian opened the ancient book. This ancient book recorded the members of the Dao Execution Army. Looking at the names, Shangguan Xian sighed softly. She knew that these people would definitely not be loyal to Yi Xian. Because Yi Xian's position as Divine Lord was a little abnormal. After all, Shaoqi did not personally convene the assembly to pass on the position. Moreover, Shaoqi's disappearance was somewhat inexplicable. It could be said that many people in the divine nation had doubts about Yi Xian's position as Divine Lord. But she knew that without Yi Xian's suppression, without Shaoqi, the chaotic universe could not resist the black-yellow great world. Although the people in the divine nation did not dare to resist Yi Xian, the Dao Execution Army would definitely not submit to Yi Xian. And if the Dao Execution Army did not submit, Yi Xian would definitely use iron blood methods to suppress them. After a while, Shangguan Xian sighed softly and turned around to leave. In the divine palace, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground, the executing heaven's sword quietly floating beside him. After a long time, he suddenly took out a Dao-ranked sword and began to absorb it. Now, he would absorb swords whenever he had time. In terms of realm, he still needed to hurry up and reach the Emperor realm as soon as possible. Only by reaching the Emperor realm would there be a qualitative transformation. Right at this moment, Yi Ling suddenly ran in. In the entire divine hall, only Yi Ling and Lanxiu and the others could enter without being notified. Yi Ling quickly walked up to Yi Xian and said with excitement, "Brother, I've accepted some disciples today, and they're all pretty good." Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling and said with a smile, "Not bad. Train him well." Yi Ling nodded. "Big brother, I want to properly manage the Immortal Dao sect. I want it to become a very, very large sect in the Chaos verse." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I will support you unconditionally. If you want money, look for me. If you want people, look for me. Anyway, if you need anything, look for me. Understand?" Yi Ling smiled sweetly. "I know." At this point, she spread out her hands. "Brother, I want some divine crystals. I'm short on money." Yi Xian laughed, and then he took out a spatial ring and gave it to Yi Ling. Yi Ling glanced at the spatial ring, and there were 2 billion divine crystals in it. Yi Ling hurriedly said, "Big brother, it's too much." Yi Xian shook his head. "Take it. If it's not enough, look for me." As he spoke, he hesitated for a moment, and then he took out another spatial ring and gave it to Yi Ling. "There are some Dao realm treasures in here. Take them and put them in the Immortal Dao sect. As a large sect, it can't be lacking in necessary treasures." Yi Ling thought for a moment, and then she nodded. She put the spatial ring away and looked at Yi Xian. "Big brother," Yi Xian smiled and said, "What's wrong?" Yi Ling hesitated for a moment, and then she said, "I heard that the profoundness world." Yi Xian stood up and rubbed Yi Ling's little head lightly, and then he said, "Don't think about all that. Big brother is here. Big brother will take care of everything, understand?" Yi Ling looked at Yi Xian while she clenched her little fists tightly. "Big brother, I'm very good at fighting as well." Yi Xian roared with laughter. "All right, I'll definitely bring you along when we fight." Yi Ling looked Yi Xian in the eye. "Definitely." Yi Xian said seriously, "Definitely." Yi Ling smiled brilliantly, and then she turned around and left. As he gazed at Yi Ling's figure in the distance, Yi Xian's brows gradually furrowed. The profoundness world. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian was about to leave. Meanwhile, a woman walked in. It was Zhang Jiu. She had been managing the sword sect and Wuyuan in Divine Martial City. She was once a palace lord and a marshal, so she was very good at management. Zhang Jiu walked over to Yi Xian, and she sized up Yi Xian. How strong are you? Yi Xian smiled. Very strong. Zhang Jiu shook her head. I can't catch up to you. Yi Xian said softly, I was forced to. He was forced out. Since Qingqing until now, his enemies had basically never stopped. Wherever he went, there would be new and powerful enemies. And now, there was the profoundness world, and it wasn't just the Xuanhuan world. There might be even more powerful people. They were endless. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. At this moment, Zhang Jiu said, Why did you call me here? Yi Xian recollected his thoughts and said seriously, You should know that I am the divine nation's divine lord. I don't have a trusted follower by my side, so I asked for your help. Zhang Jiu frowned. Don't you have that Shangguanxian? Yi Xian shook his head. She's not bad, but her heart isn't completely on my side. Zhang Jiu nodded slightly. I understand. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian. What position do you want? Yi Xian smiled. What position do you want? Zhang Jiu shook her head. You give it to me. Yi Xian nodded. From now on, you can represent me completely. As he said this, he took out a token and gave it to Zhang Jiu. This is the Divine Lord token. Seeing it is the same as seeing the person. Zhang Jiu said solemnly, What if someone isn't satisfied? Yi Xian suddenly said, Come out. As soon as he said this, a black-clothed woman appeared not far behind Zhang Jiu. Yi Xian said, She is under your command now. Not only that, but you can also mobilize the dark guards. Zhang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. I understand. As she said this, she turned and left. When she walked out of the door, she saw Shangguanxian. Seeing Zhang Jiu, Shangguanxian was slightly taken aback. You are? Zhang Jiu smiled. Zhang Jiu. From now on, I will be by his side and be responsible for some of his matters. Please give me some pointers in the future. Hearing this, Shangguanxian's expression stiffened slightly, but she quickly recovered. She nodded. Welcome, Miss Zhang. Zhang Jiu nodded. I still have things to do. Let's talk later. As she said this, she walked out. Shangguanxian was silent for a moment, and then she walked into the hall. She walked in front of Yi Xian and bowed slightly. I have informed all the members of the Dao execution army, but no one responded. They might, Yi Xian said softly, have Yan Dao and Zhenguan Dao, as well as Xiang Yu, be ready to listen to my orders at any time. Shangguanxian smiled bitterly. Do we really have to go this far? As she said this, she lowered her head slightly. I have no other intentions, nor am I siding with them. It's just that this army was created by the War God Lord. These people have made great contributions to the Divine Kingdom. Yi Xian looked at Shangguanxian. These people are no longer under our control. I don't care who they are loyal to. I am now the ruler of the Divine Kingdom. Since they are not loyal to me, I naturally have the right to expel them from the Divine Kingdom. Speaking up to here, he got up and walked in front of Shangguanxian. These people think that they are the most elite warriors of the Divine Kingdom, so they are arrogant and do not put me in their eyes. Since that is the case, why should I respect them? As he said this, he walked to the entrance of the hall and said softly, I don't want to be the ruler of the Divine Kingdom, but since Little Seven wants me to be the ruler, then I will be the ruler. I will also lead everyone in the chaotic universe to fight against the chaotic universe. Since I have chosen to be the ruler, then I will not allow anyone in the chaotic universe to challenge my authority. Whoever dares to challenge me will die. Yi Xian didn't want to be the ruler of the chaotic universe, but he understood one thing very well. In front of a great enemy, there could be no internal strife. If there was, then it must be eliminated immediately. Moreover, no one could challenge his authority, otherwise he would not be able to convince the people of the world. Behind Yi Xian, Shengguan Xian glanced at him and didn't say anything. She was a smart person and knew what Yi Xian was thinking. After a moment of silence, Shengguan Xian said softly, "I saw the 9th young lady just now." Yi Xian nodded. "I asked her to come and help me." Shengguan Xian lowered her head slightly. "Do you need me to leave?" Yi Xian shook his head. "No need. You continue to do what you are doing, but in the future, she will be the leader." "Her words are my words." Shengguan Xian nodded. Understood. She knew that her position had changed from the first to the second. However, this was already the best result. As long as she didn't completely lose this position, the Shengguan family wouldn't decline because she was still by Yi Xian's side and was still in the inner circle of power. It was just that this power might become less and less in the future. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss Shengguan, during this time, you have helped me a lot, but you may not be so clear about your own position, so I need someone of my own to help me. Of course, you can rest assured that you are still you. You are still the same as before, but I hope you understand one thing, and this is also the last time I will tell you. In the future, my orders cannot be disobeyed, especially in front of others. Do you understand?" Shengguan Xian nodded slightly. "I understand." Yi Xian nodded. "You may leave." Shengguan Xian bowed slightly, turned around, and left. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. He took out a Dao realm sword and was about to devour it, but at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly came from the sky outside the palace. An enemy attack? Yi Xian frowned slightly. In the next moment, he was already outside the palace. Above the palace, a man fell straight down. The man carried an extremely powerful force. At this moment, Yan Dao suddenly appeared in front of the man and pulled out his saber. Boom! The man was forced to stop. At this moment, 12 people appeared behind the man. These 12 people were all at the peak of the god state, and their auras were extremely powerful. Yan Dao looked at the man and the others and frowned slightly. "You are," the man in the lead sneered. "What? You don't even recognize our Dao Execution Army?" Dao Execution Army. Hearing this, Yan Dao's face sank. At this moment, the man suddenly looked at Yi Xian and pointed at Yi Xian angrily. "This person killed my Dao Execution Army, how can he be the God Lord? He deserves to die." Chapter 680. Yan Dao's face darkened when he heard the man's words. He didn't expect these people to cause trouble for Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Yan Dao's expression darkened. He knew Yi Xian's temper. His temper was definitely more violent than Shao Qi's. Moreover, once he became ruthless, he would do anything. In the distance, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He didn't expect these people to really come for him and kill him. At this time, many divine nation powerhouses had appeared. The Dark Guards and the Shenwu army had gathered behind Yi Xian. The man in front of Yi Xian looked coldly at Yan Dao and the Shenwu army. "We are the Dao Execution Army personally appointed by the Martial Divine Lord. How dare you act rashly in front of us?" The Dao Execution Army. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings instantly changed when they heard this. This army could be said to be the most mysterious and powerful army in the divine nation. Most importantly, it was an army personally created by the divine nation's founder, Wu Anning. At this time, Shengguan Xian walked to Yi Xian's side and whispered, "The Dao Execution Army has 3 great privileges. First, you don't have to kneel before future divine lords. Second, you don't have to be controlled by anyone except the Divine Lord. Third, If future divine lords are heartless, the Tao execution army can come out and kill them. 3 great privileges. Yi Xian said in a low voice, this martial god master has given them a lot of power. Shangguan Xian nodded, they are very powerful. Yi Xian smiled, they are against me now. What do you think I should do? Shangguan Xian's expression changed. She knew that God Yi was taking the initiative to kill them. Shangguan Xian lowered her head slightly, you must have a reasonable reason. I know you don't care about these things, but the divine nation does. Even if you want to kill them, you must have a reason that everyone in the world believes. These people have extremely special identities. You must not kill them. Otherwise, the people of the divine nation will be in danger and even cause panic within the divine nation. Then, she looked at Yi Xian, violence cannot solve all problems. It will even cause more problems in the divine nation. Yi Xian smiled and said, all right. Then I'll reason with them first. I'm a very reasonable person. Pass down my order, let all the officials come here. Shangguan Xian glanced at Yi Xian and then quietly retreated. Not long after, all the officials of God Nation arrived at the scene. When they found out that the Tao execution army had appeared, these people were originally very happy, because what God Nation currently lacked the most were experts. However, their hearts instantly sank when they found out that the Tao execution army had come to look for trouble with Yi Xian. Was there going to be a civil war in the Divine Kingdom? The ministers of the Divine Kingdom were very worried. When he saw all the officials arrive here, Yi Xian gazed at the man who led the Tao punishment army, and he said with a smile, all of you came here today to kill me? The man looked at Yi Xian. You killed someone from my Tao execution army. What right do you have to be a god lord? Yi Xian smiled, then looked at the divine image who was extremely prestigious in the god nation. Elder One, do you think I came to the position of divine master in the right way? Everyone looked at Elder One. Elder One wasn't very strong, but his prestige in the god nation was extremely high. Moreover, he had disciples all over the world. So, he could be said to represent all the scholars in the world. Elder One fell silent for a short moment before he said, His Majesty was personally taught by His Majesty Little Qi, so he naturally came to the position in the right way. He was very clearly aware that if he questioned Yi Xian now, then God Nation would instantly collapse. Now, it lacked an extraordinary expert, and Yi Xian didn't lack a God Nation. God Nation would instantly collapse without Yi Xian, but nothing would happen to Yi Xian if he lost the God Nation. Perhaps it would even be much easier for him. God Nation couldn't lose Yi Xian. Most importantly, Yi Xian's position as Divine Master was personally taught by Little Qi, so it was perfectly justifiable. Yi Xian smiled, Elder One, then tell me, can I mobilize the Tao execution army? Elder One bowed slightly, of course. As a Divine Master, His Majesty has the right to mobilize any army in God Nation. Even though the Tao execution army is special, it's beneath a Divine Master and not beyond him, so it doesn't have the right to question a Divine Master. Of course, if a Divine Master is heartless, then the Tao execution army naturally has the right to depose a Divine Master. However, when he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Yi Xian. His Majesty hasn't done anything heartless since he ascended to the throne. On the contrary, he's even subdued the entire universe and established a new territory for God Nation. I'll be the first to object if anyone dares to question his position. We object as well. Meanwhile, the officials behind Elder One spoke in unison. Many of them were from clans, and they'd benefited the most from Yi Xian since he'd subdued the entire universe. Because they'd absorbed too many geniuses from the universe. Moreover, even though the spirit energy in the universe was thin, it was still sufficient for them to develop for a very long time. Most importantly, Yi Xian's strength. The members of the Tao execution army might not have a clear understanding of Yi Xian's strength, but they were. Now, Yi Xian was the strongest person in the entire chaotic universe. Without Yi Xian, how could the chaotic universe resist the black-yellow great world? Their heads. It could be said that everyone's interests had been tied to Yi Xian unknowingly. Without Yi Xian, if the black-yellow Great World attacked, everyone would be finished. Seeing that everyone was supporting Yi Xian, the face of the man leading the Dao execution army immediately became unsightly. Yi Xian looked at the man and smiled. You said that I killed Yan. As he spoke, he looked at Shangguan Xian. Miss Shangguan, tell me, why did I kill Yan? Shangguan Xian said, Yan despised His Majesty and spoke disrespectfully. Moreover, he attacked first. Yi Xian smiled slightly, then looked at Elder Wen. Elder Wen, the Dao execution army is special, but can they be disrespectful to a divine master? Elder Wen's face was gloomy. They're special, but they're still citizens of the divine kingdom. What right do they have to be disrespectful to a divine master? As he spoke, he gazed at the Dao execution army. Have all of you forgotten your original intentions? Your duty is to protect the divine kingdom, not to stand above it. The man had a rather ferocious expression on his face. Protect the divine kingdom? If such a person becomes a divine master, then it's fine if the divine kingdom isn't protected. Elder Wen was infuriated. How presumptuous. Where are the imperial guards? As soon as Elder Wen's voice resounded, the guards suddenly surrounded the group of 10+ people. At the same time, the divine martial army moved out as well, and they surrounded those people. The man glanced at the surroundings and grinned fiercely. You think all of you can resist us? At this moment, Yi Xian, who was not far away, suddenly disappeared. The moment he disappeared, the man's expression changed drastically, and he punched forward with both fists. A ray of light flashed. Hiss! The man's hands were chopped off by Yi Xian's sword. At the same time, Yi Xian's sword was pressed against the center of the man's forehead. The surroundings were extremely silent. Yi Xian gazed at the man. If I wasn't the Divine Kingdom's Divine Master and didn't consider all of your merits from all those years ago, then I would have fucking ended all of you by now. As he spoke, he glanced at the others behind the man. What's your duty? It's to protect the Divine Kingdom. Are all of you protecting the Divine Kingdom right now? The man in front of Yi Xian was just about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly raised his sword and thrust it forward. The sword stabbed half an inch into the man. Hiss! Blood sprayed out. Yi Xian gazed at the man. Did I allow you to speak? The man laughed fiercely. A soldier can be killed but not humiliated. If you have the ability. Yi Xian raised his hand and swung. Hiss! The man's head instantly flew into the air. The surroundings fell silent. The members of the Dao execution army gazed at Yi Xian with eyes that were filled with fear. Fear. At this moment, they finally realized that this newly appointed Divine Master's strength was actually so terrifying. Yi Xian glanced at them. All of you have two choices now. The first is to stay in the Divine Kingdom. The second is to leave the Divine Kingdom. Of course, if you choose to leave, then all of your names will be removed from the Divine Kingdom from this moment onward. All of you will no longer be members of the Divine Kingdom, and you will no longer receive any special treatment. Their expressions instantly became unsightly when they heard this. Special treatment. All of them received the salary of the Divine Kingdom every single year, and they even received quite a lot. It could be said that their formidable combat strength was completely fostered by the Divine Kingdom. If they didn't have the support of the Divine Kingdom's resources, then they could only go work. Of course, with their strength, there would be people who wanted them no matter where they went. However, the treatment they received would definitely not be as good as the Divine Kingdom. Moreover, they were members of the Divine Kingdom and possessed respected statuses in the Divine Kingdom. If they left, then everything would be gone. Now, Yi Xian wanted them to make a choice. Suddenly, a voice resounded from the side. Are you driving us out? Yi Xian turned around and looked over. Not far away, a middle-aged man walked over slowly. Beside Yi Xian, Shangguan Xian said in a low voice, Commander of the Dao Execution Army, Han Qi. The main character had arrived. Yi Xian looked at Han Qi and said with a smile, Didn't I give you two choices? Han Qi walked to a place not far away from Yi Xian, and he looked at Yi Xian. His Majesty Shao Qi disappeared mysteriously, and your position as Divine Master came mysteriously as well. What's wrong with us questioning you? Is there a problem? Yi Xian smiled and said, do I need your approval to be the Divine Master? As he spoke, his smile gradually turned cold. Do I need your approval? As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward swiftly and slashed down with his sword in both hands. Hiss! Space was instantly sliced apart by him. Han Chi's eyes instantly narrowed slightly when he saw Yi Xian's sword, and there was a serious look in his eyes. He opened his palm, and a golden truncheon suddenly appeared in his hand. He held the truncheon in his hand and fiercely slashed forward. Boom! A powerful force suddenly erupted in front of the two of them, and Han Chi instantly retreated nearly 100 feet away, while Yi Xian did not retreat even half a step. As soon as Han Chi stopped, the golden mace in his hand cracked. Seeing this scene, Han Chi's face instantly darkened. This golden mace was bestowed to him by Wu Anning, but now, it was actually cracked by Yi Xian's sword. In the distance, just as Yi Xian was about to make another move, Han Chi's face changed, and he suddenly raised the golden mace with both hands. Martial Divine Master, please. Boom! The golden mace suddenly erupted with a golden light, and in the next moment, a woman condensed within the golden light. P.S. I said I wanted to be a broadcaster. Someone said I was an egg Biyao? The person who said this, do you dare to report your address? For the first time, I felt a great humiliation. You can scold me for not updating enough, you can scold me for being weak, you can scold me for being shameless, but please don't insult my looks. Thank you. Chapter 681. Wu Anning. Everyone looked at the woman, and it didn't take long for her appearance to become clearer. In the end, all the experts here knelt on one knee and said in unison, Greetings, Divine Lord Marshal. Wu Anning. The first Divine Lord of the Divine Kingdom, and the founder of the Divine Kingdom. He possessed supreme authority in the Divine Kingdom. The members of the Dao Execution Army knelt on one knee as well when they saw Wu Anning. Greetings, Divine Lord. Even Han Chi immediately knelt on one knee. Greetings, Divine Lord. The only person here who didn't kneel was Yi Xian. Wu Anning wore a white robe with his hands behind his back, and there was a red dot between his brows. He emanated an overbearing imposing aura that looked down upon the world. After Wu Anning made an appearance, her gaze descended onto Yi Xian. You're the current Divine Lord? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Wu Anning's face was expressionless. Then why don't you kneel when you see me? Yi Xian smiled, why should I kneel? How presumptuous. Han Chi suddenly shouted furiously from nearby, Yi Xian, how dare you be disrespectful to the Divine Lord Marshal? Yi Xian looked at Han Chi, I advise you to shut up. Han Chi was just about to speak when Wu Anning suddenly looked at him. Is this how you treat the Divine Lords of the Divine Kingdom? Hearing this, Han Chi's expression changed, and he immediately lowered his head. This subordinate wouldn't dare, nor have I ever disrespected any other Divine Master. It's just that this Yi Xian killed members of my Dao Execution Army and even wanted to drive us away. Thus, this subordinate had no choice but to ask for the Divine Master's help. Wu Anning looked at Yi Xian, why did you kill the Dao Execution Army? Yi Xian smiled, because they didn't listen to my orders and looked down on me. Wu Anning frowned slightly when she heard this, and she looked at Han Chi. The latter hurriedly said, it was Yi Xian who obtained the position of Divine Lord improperly. The previous Divine Lord, Shao Qi, vanished inexplicably, and then he ascended to the position. This matter is truly too strange. At this moment, Elder Wen suddenly walked out and bowed slightly to Wu Anning, Your Majesty, what he said is completely absurd. Divine Lord Yi obtaining the position of Divine Lord is justifiable, and it is precisely because of him that our Divine Kingdom can resist the Black-Yellow Great World. As he spoke, he looked towards Han Chi. Commander Han has summoned Your Majesty to appear this time for his own selfish reasons. Your Majesty, please understand. Han Chi's expression changed and was just about to speak when Wu Anning suddenly said, Shut up. Han Chi's expression instantly changed drastically when he heard this, and he hurriedly knelt down. This time, he didn't kneel on one knee, but on both knees. Moreover, his body was even trembling. Wu Anning looked at Yi Xian. Let's go somewhere else. T, ant to be, ant, and had T for, Wu to be Wu-tes, and the marshal of Ant Elder One and the others had stood up, but Han Chi and the others didn't dare stand up. Wu ant, teet. Yi Xian nodded. Wu Anning sized up Yi Xian. You're a little special. Yi Xian did not reply. Wu Anning asked softly, has the Xuanhuan Great World discovered this place? Yi Xian nodded. Senior, you also know of the Black-Yellow Great World? Wu Anning nodded. I know. As she spoke, she glanced downwards, then shook her head. The Chaos Verse cannot fight against them. Yi Xian said, I know. Wu Anning looked at Yi Xian. What are your plans? Yi Xian smiled and said, what else can I do? Of course it was to fight with them. After all, even if we surrender, nothing good will come out of it. At this point, he suddenly looked at Wu Anning. Senior, why don't you come back and become the Divine Master yourself? Wu Anning shook his head, I can't come back. Yi Xian asked, why? Wu Anning said, it's a long story. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. That girl called Little Seven, is she in danger? Yi Xian shook his head. I came into contact with those people who brought her along. They did not harm Little Seven. However, Little Seven's identity is quite special, Wu Anning said softly, her background is indeed very special. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. You are also special. Yi Xian said, Senior, I can't handle it alone. Are you sure you won't come back? Wu Anning shook her head. It's not that I don't want to, but I can't. As she spoke, she waved her right hand. She appeared in front of the temple with Yi Xian again. Everyone looked at Wu Anning. Wu Anning looked at Yi Xian. From this moment on, he is our Divine Kingdom's Divine Master. No one is allowed to question his identity. As she said this, she pointed with her finger. A ball of white light floated into Yi Xian's brow. Use this item at the crucial moment. Yi Xian was stunned and then he nodded his head. Wu Anning looked at Han Chi. Do you think you are special? Han Chi's face instantly turned ashen white. He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I know my mistake. Wu Anning kept silent for a moment and then said, Since you have done well, I won't take your life. However, your heart is already broken and I can't let you stay here. From now on, leave the God Kingdom and never come back. If you have any other thoughts after you leave, I will kill you in the future. When he heard this, Han Chi sat down paralyzed. He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I know my mistake. I am willing to be loyal to God Lord Yi. I won't dare to have any other thoughts. When he saw these scenes, Yi Xian was filled with emotions. Han Chi's strength was at least half a step to End Realm, but he was so respectful towards Wu Anning. This respect wasn't fake. One could imagine how holy Wu Anning was in the hearts of the people of the God Kingdom. Wu Anning looked at Han Chi and the others with a complicated gaze. These people had once followed her through life and death. After a moment of silence, Wu Anning looked towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, If you want to stay, you can. However, you have to listen to my orders. Han Chi hurriedly bowed respectfully towards Yi Xian. I definitely won't dare to have any other thoughts. Yi Xian looked towards Wu Anning. Is he trustworthy? Wu Anning nodded her head. They have all followed me through life and death and can be trusted. Moreover, with your strength, apart from that little brat, no one in the God Kingdom can hurt you. As she said this, she looked towards Han Chi. With his strength, even 10 of you won't be his match. Don't do stupid things. Otherwise, you won't have a second chance. Do you understand? Han Qi bowed respectfully. I understand. Wu Anning nodded her head. She glanced at the surroundings with a complicated gaze. Finally, she looked at Yi Xian. Protect this universe well. As her voice faded, her body gradually turned illusory. At this moment, all the people of the God Kingdom present knelt on one knee. Farewell, martial God Master. Wu Anning completely disappeared. In the field, Han Qi walked towards Yi Xian and knelt on one knee. Greetings, Divine Master. Behind him, those members of the Dao Execution Army also hurriedly walked over and knelt on one knee. Loyalty. The current them didn't dare to have any other thoughts. Firstly, Yi Xian's strength was there for all to see. Secondly, Yi Xian obtained Wu Anning's personal acknowledgement. It could be said that no one dared to question Yi Xian's authority now. Yi Xian looked towards Han Qi. How many people does the Dao Execution Army have? Han Qi said in a deep voice, 26 people. Most of them are at the God realm, and their combat strength is extraordinary. Yi Xian nodded. Let all of them come to the God Kingdom. Han Qi nodded. Peak. They were just half a step away from the Saint Realm. Emperor Realm wasn't far away. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and then looked towards Shangguan. She said softly, we have gathered all the powers in the vast universe. Just the vast universe alone has gathered 39 Emperor Realm experts. Along with our God Kingdom, we have many Emperor Realm experts. However, we have less than 12 God Realm experts. As for End Realm experts, we don't have a single one. End Realm experts. Yi Xian kept silent. Be it the vast universe or chaotic universe, there were no End Realm experts. One could say that if they went up against Xianhuang Great World, the chaotic universe would definitely be at a disadvantage. Yi Xian nodded, I know. Shangguan bowed slightly and then said, we have prepared some super formations in our God Kingdom and can activate them at any moment. Yi Xian nodded, how are the people? Shangguan said, unity. Our God Kingdom has always been united, no one has fled or caused chaos. Yi Xian nodded slightly, there is no need to plot against them and tell them everything. There is only one path in front of us, no one has any other path. We can only fight to the death. Shangguan nodded, understood. Lady Jiang and I will deal with all these matters. Yi Xian said, also, let the people from God Martial City come here. Shangguan said, Lady An brought Wu Yuan and Sword Sect disciples to Order City yesterday. They are in the city now, waiting for your Majesty's orders. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at that moment, Tianji sect leader suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian, they are here. They were here. Chapter 682. They were here. Yi Xian naturally knew who was coming. The people from the Black-Yellow Great World were here. Yi Xian nodded, I will go. Tell our people to prepare. Shangguan hurriedly said, no. With that, she stood in front of Yi Xian, you can't have any accidents. Yi Xian smiled, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Shangguan still wanted to say something, but at this time, a voice came from the side, let him go. Shangguan turned to look, and the one who spoke was Jiang Jiu. Jiang Jiu looked at Shangguan and smiled, if he can't beat them, he will run. Run. Yi Xian laughed, and he was about to leave, when Jiang Jiu suddenly said, we will wait for you. Yi Xian nodded, wait for me. As his voice fell, he suddenly turned into a sword light and soared into the sky, disappearing at the end of the horizon in the blink of an eye. There was still some worry in Shangguan eyes. At this time, Jiang Jiu suddenly smiled, don't worry, he will definitely protect himself. Because his sister is here. Shangguan looked at Jiang Jiu, sister? Jiang Jiu nodded and said softly, crazy sister protector, sister. In the entire country of Jiang, almost no one did not know to what extent Yi Xian protected his sister. Touching him might not necessarily be a problem, but touching Yi Ling would definitely result in death. And Yi Ling being here proved that he would definitely come back. Shengguan Xian looked up at the sky and said softly, "This time, can we survive?" Jiang Jiao was silent. Black-yellow great world. This was a super powerful world in the four-dimensional universe. Whether it was the experts or the martial arts civilization, it was far superior to the chaotic universe. Could the chaotic universe survive? No one knew. Yi Xian entered the vast starry sky. He flew on his sword, his speed increasing to the extreme. The northern region had come. And he wanted to see how many people came from the northern region, and how strong these people were. Once, he only had his sister by his side. But now, he had many more responsibilities. Divine Martial City, Sword Sect, Divine Nation. Once the swordsman's sword was bound, it would slow down. But in his opinion, responsibility was not a restraint. If a person couldn't even bear his own responsibility, could he still be called a man? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He sped up. About 4 hours later, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. Not far in front of him was the black-yellow Great World space base that he and Shaoqi had visited for the first time. Not far in front of him, there was a huge starship floating in the air. This starship was several times larger than his Imperial starship. The entire starship traveled across half of the starry sky. On this starship stood a group of soldiers wearing golden armor and holding golden spears. There were tens of thousands of them. These soldiers stood there in an orderly manner, giving off an unstoppable feeling. A true master of hundreds of battles. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian knew that the northern region was serious. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the huge starship. As soon as he appeared, nearly 100 auras suddenly locked onto him. Yi Xian laughed. "I am Yi Xian, the Divine Nation's master. I've long heard that the northern region has many monsters. Today, I've come to challenge them. I wonder if anyone wants to fight?" As soon as the voice fell, a man in white suddenly appeared in front of him. The man in white looked at Yi Xian. "You're Yi Xian?" Yi Xian looked at the man in white and smiled. "You've heard of me?" The man in white was expressionless. "I heard that you refused the northern region's invitation." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The man in white chuckled. "I have to say, you're very courageous, but also very stupid." "You?" Yi Xian suddenly said, "You're representing the northern region?" The man in white nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. The man in white's expression changed. A spear suddenly appeared in his hand. The next moment, he stabbed forward. The spear was like a thunderclap. As Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the spear instantly exploded. Seeing this scene, the man in white's expression changed dramatically. He retreated rapidly. Yi Xian's sword was even faster. A flying sword directly appeared in front of the man in white. The latter was shocked and hurriedly dodged to the side. But it was still a little too late. His entire right arm was sent flying. After the man in white stopped, he looked at Yi Xian. "Your sword." Before he finished speaking, a flying sword suddenly pierced through the space between his eyebrows. Chi! Blood splattered. The man in white's aura instantly disappeared. His eyes were still filled with disbelief. He didn't think that he would die so quickly. Yi Xian was expressionless. He looked at the huge ship in the distance. "Show me something powerful." The huge ship didn't respond. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Is there no one else?" At this moment, a white light suddenly flew out from the huge ship. The next moment, a woman in white landed in front of Yi Xian. The woman in white was dressed in white. She was tall and slender. Her face was exquisite. She was a rare beauty. The woman in white glanced at Yi Xian. Just as she was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly rushed forward and slashed down with his sword with both hands. Seeing Yi Xian's sudden attack, the woman in white's expression changed drastically. She flicked her sleeve and a ribbon floated out. This ribbon almost instantly tied up Yi Xian. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What the hell is this? Without thinking, he slashed with his sword. The ribbon instantly broke into countless pieces and splattered in all directions. The woman in white who wanted to follow up with another attack was directly slashed back by a sword light. As soon as she stopped, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above her. The next moment, a sword light slashed down at her face. Hiss! Everywhere the sword passed, space was torn apart like fragile paper. The woman in white's pupils constricted. She suddenly opened her hands, and countless ribbons shot into the sky. These ribbons instantly wrapped around Yi Xian. However, in the blink of an eye, the ribbons were directly slashed into pieces by Yi Xian's executing heaven sword. Meanwhile, the woman in white had retreated to the huge ship. She fled. The woman in white looked at Yi Xian with fear in her eyes. At this moment, there were no less than a dozen bloody marks on her body. She glanced at the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand. Do you dare to put down this sword and fight me fairly? Yi Xian glanced at the woman in white. Sure. However, you have to suppress your cultivation level. Suppress it to the same level as me, the Supreme Realm. How about that? The woman in white's expression instantly became unsightly when she heard this. A mocking smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. He ignored the woman in white, put away his sword, and looked at the huge ship. Can't you send someone with a little intelligence? Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from the huge ship. Kid, how arrogant. As soon as the voice resounded, a middle-aged man suddenly flew out. At the same time, a spear shot explosively towards Yi Xian like a bolt of lightning. Everywhere the spear passed, space was actually incinerated. It was an extremely shocking sight. Yi Xian opened his palm, and then the executing heaven sword flew forward. A ray of light flashed through the surroundings. Hiss! The spear in midair was instantly slashed into two by the executing heaven sword. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly vanished. In the next moment, he'd arrived in front of the middle-aged man, and then he suddenly smashed his fist down towards the middle-aged man. The fist of burial. As soon as his fist descended, the space in an area of over 100 kilometers instantly cracked apart. Rumble. On the other hand, the middle-aged man was blasted back onto the huge ship by Yi Xian's punch. He just stopped moving when blood sprayed from the corner of his mouth like a fountain. It was an extremely shocking sight. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian, who stood above them. Yi Xian's strength had slightly exceeded their expectations. Yi Xian looked down with an emotionless expression. Too weak. Give me someone who can fight. The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian with deep fear in his eyes. Only now did he realize that this divine leader's strength was actually so terrifying. He didn't attack again because he would only be asking to be humiliated if he did. Especially when Yi Xian was in possession of that sword. Yi Xian was practically a semi-invincible existence. Because there weren't any treasures that could resist Yi Xian's executing heaven sword for now. Yi Xian looked down coldly. What? Is there no one else? Right at this moment, an ethereal man in a luxurious robe suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The man had long hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and he had a scholarly bearing. Everyone on the huge ship instantly knelt down on one knee when they saw the ethereal man. Greetings, King. King. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Needless to say, this man in the luxurious robe was the black-yellow Great World's king of the northern region. Had the main character finally appeared? Yi Xian looked at the man in the luxurious robe, and the man in the luxurious robe looked back at him. Yi Xian gripped the executing heaven sword tightly in his right hand and remained silent. The man in the luxurious robe sized up Yi Xian and nodded slightly. Not bad indeed. No wonder this king's subordinates have died time and time again. As he spoke, he glanced behind Yi Xian and said softly, "The chaotic universe. The spiritual qi is indeed abundant." Yi Xian looked at the man in the luxurious robe. "This is not your main body." The king of the northern region looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "You want to kill me?" Yi Xian held the executing heaven sword in his right hand and said nothing. The king of the northern region suddenly shook his head and smiled, naive. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. "I know you have a trump card, but you don't know the difference between us. Perhaps in the future, your achievements will not be lower than this king's, but right now, you are no match for this king at all. Do you believe that?" Yi Xian smiled. "All I know is that you have to give it a try." "What if you win?" "Haha," the king of the northern region suddenly laughed. "Win? You are so naive. Yi Xian, this king asks you, how will your chaotic universe fight against the northern region?" Yi Xian smiled. "I will die if I fight, and I will die if I don't." "Why shouldn't I fight? What do you think?" The king of the northern region looked at Yi Xian. "This king once gave you the choice to live, but you gave it up." Yi Xian dusted off the dust on his chest and smiled. "Would rather die standing than live kneeling." The king of the northern region nodded slightly. "You have the pride of a swordsman. Not bad." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. "Don't worry, when we get rid of the person behind you, you will be able to die standing as you wish." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "The person behind me?" The king of the northern region smiled. "Isn't it the woman in the plain dress behind you?" Yi Xian's face darkened. "You are targeting her." The king of the northern region said softly, "If she is not dead, I will not be able to rest easy." Yi Xian suddenly said fiercely, "I will bear the consequences of my own actions. If you have the ability, come and find me." "Why are you going after her?" "This has nothing to do with her, so don't go after her. If you want to go after her, go after me. P.S. I am going to Beijing on the 8th of this month to participate in the online literature conference. Are there any friends from Beijing? We can exchange some ideas then. For the record, don't come if you have a sexual orientation." Chapter 683. The northern region king looked at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, you actually want us to go find her, right?" Yi Xian's expression calmed down. "Guess." The northern region king smiled. "It seems that you are very confident in her strength. Unfortunately, you underestimate me and the northern region." Yi Xian shook his head. "I didn't underestimate you. Really. I also know that you are much stronger than I imagined. But..." Saying this, he looked at the northern region king. "What I don't understand is, why are you targeting her? Isn't your goal the fifth-dimensional treasure and the chaotic universe?" This was what he didn't understand. "Why were you targeting the plain-dressed woman?" The northern region king looked at Yi Xian. "Don't you understand? You're not a threat to us, but the people behind you are. Do you understand?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I'm no threat. Why are you looking down on me?" The northern region king looked at Yi Xian. "Your threat is in the future, but the woman behind you is in the present." Yi Xian looked at the northern region king. "Do you know how strong she is?" The northern region king smiled. "Do you know how strong we are?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then, he said, "Good luck." Saying this, he turned and left. The northern region king suddenly said, "Yi Xian, you know nothing about the strength of the black-yellow great world. It won't be long before you realize how ignorant and laughable your resistance is." Yi Xian stopped and said softly, "Do your best." Saying this, he disappeared into the distance. Behind Yi Xian, the northern region king said softly, "Pass down my order. Everyone is to gather in the chaotic universe." Saying this, he turned and left. Soon, the giant ship began to move forward. Its destination was the chaotic universe. At the end of the distant starry sky, Yi Xian stopped and slowly closed his eyes. "Miss Yu, how strong was that person just now?" A moment later, Yu said, "Not someone you can fight." Yi Xian nodded slightly. Compared to that plain-dressed woman? Yu fell silent. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What? Is she stronger than the plainly dressed woman? Yu suddenly said, why are you comparing him to that woman in a plain dress? How could they be compared? That plain-dressed woman is already invincible, okay? Invincible, Yi Xian's expression froze. This. Invincible? Yu said calmly, she might not be number one, but at least in the fourth dimension, no one can defeat her. Yi Xian said solemnly, is he that strong? Yu spoke indifferently, she's not strong, she's invincible, an unreasonable invincible. Yi Xian was speechless. Yu asked again, they are going to look for her? Yi Xian nodded. The Northern Region King thinks that she's a bigger threat, so he wants to deal with her first before dealing with me. Yu was silent for a moment, then said, are all the people in the fourth dimension so stupid? Yi Xian was speechless. Yu said again, isn't it good to be alive? Why do they have to look for her? That woman's emotions are unstable, one wrong move and their Xianhuang Great World will disappear completely. I don't understand, can't they just deal with you? You're so weak now, if they want to deal with you, you most likely won't be able to resist. But they just have to look for that woman, saying something about getting rid of future troubles. They are getting rid of future troubles for you. Green City, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince, why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling, this is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed, he should be flogged 30 times as a warning. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. What are you shouting about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I'll risk my life for you. Yi Lang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back. Understood. Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The great elder's eyes narrowed, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger, leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop, and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. he should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others. The great elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded, "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded, "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu saw something, and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu felt his head spin, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.